Every now and then, the past hands us something that shouldn't exist. An object, a monument, a carving, a map. Something so ancient, so advanced, or so wildly out of its time that historians struggle to fit it into the timeline at all. When we find things like this, the world reacts the same way every time, first with excitement, then confusion, then silence. Archaeologists document them. Scholars debate them. Museums lock them away. And eventually, these discoveries fade into the background, quietly stored, quietly avoided, quietly unexplained. But not today, because in this series we're digging up the artifacts, monuments, and mysteries that challenge everything we think we know about ancient history. Real discoveries, real sites, real objects, some protected, some forbidden, some erased. And every single one of them raises a question the history books still refuse to answer. Before we begin, make sure you're subscribed to the channel for more deep dives into the ancient world. Because the deeper we go, the more it becomes clear. Our past was not simple, it was not small, and it was definitely not what we were told in school. Now, let's start part 1 with a mystery buried in the jungles of Mexico. A civilization older than the Maya, older than the Aztec. A people whose achievements shouldn't be possible for their time. Yet the proof is right there, staring at us from the jungle floor. Discovery 1. The colossal heads of the Olmec. The faces of a forgotten power deep in the humid jungles of southern Mexico, long before the great temples of Teotihuacan or the pyramids of the Maya dominated the landscape. An even older civilization rose, and then vanished. A culture so ancient and so mysterious that archaeologists still don't know what they called themselves. We only know the name the Aztecs gave their ruins thousands of years later, the Olmec, the rubber people. But nothing about their greatest creations is soft. Scattered through the forests of modern Veracruz and Tabasco are 17 enormous stone heads, some as tall as a house, some weighing more than a city bus. Each one carved from volcanic basalt hauled from a mountain more than 50 miles away. These sculptures are the first known colossal monuments in the Americas. They are also one of the biggest mysteries in archaeology, because the Olmec made these giants at a time when they had no metal tools, no wheels, no draft animals, no known writing system, no recorded rulers, and yet they carved portraits so lifelike, so detailed, and so mathematically precise that even modern engineers say the achievement is astonishing. The first discovery, a face in the ground. The first head was discovered in 1862 by a farmer clearing land. At first, explorers thought it was natural rock. But as more were unearthed, standing upright or buried to their necks, it became clear these weren't natural formations. These were deliberate, massive, human, intentional. Each head stands between 6 and 10 feet tall. Each weighs between 10 and 40 tons. And each one is unique, meaning these weren't symbols or generic designs. They were portraits, portraits of someone important, someone powerful, someone the Olmec wanted the world, or maybe the gods, to remember. But how did they build them? This is where the mystery deepens. All 17 heads were carved from basalt quarried in the Tuxtla Mountains, more than 50 miles away. And the jungle between those mountains and the Olmec heartland is some of the densest and most difficult terrain in Mesoamerica. Even today, getting a 40-ton block of stone through that landscape would require bulldozers, cranes, heavy machinery, a specially prepared route. The Olmec had none of this. Most archaeologists believe they moved the stones by dragging them on wooden rollers or hauling them on rafts along rivers. But here's the problem. There is no evidence of a transportation route, no cleared paths, no carved canals, no flattened ground under the sites. Others argue that the Olmec floated the stones on rafts. But basalt this dense sinks quickly without perfect balance, and there are no remains of rafts, infrastructure, or shoreline facilities big enough to manage such cargo. It seems the stones simply appeared where they were carved, a logistical impossibility. Yet there they are. The carving too advanced, too early even after the stones arrived. Carving them would have been another impossible task. Basalt is one of the hardest stones on Earth, denser and more difficult to shape than granite. And the Olmec carved it with stone hammers. Just stone hammers, nothing else. Researchers who recreated the process discovered that shaping just 1 square foot of basalt takes hours of continuous pounding. Now multiply that by the entire surface area of a 10-ton sculpture. We're talking tens of thousands of hours of labor. Yet the heads are smoothly finished, geometrically consistent, perfectly proportioned, highly detailed around the eyes, lips, and helmets. The helmets themselves are another question. The helmets, warriors, athletes, or something else? Every Olmec head wears a helmet with unique patterns, some simple, some incredibly ornate. Historians debate their meaning. Were they rulers wearing royal helmets, warriors in ceremonial gear, athletes in protective headwear for a sport like the Mesoamerican ball game, or something else entirely? But one thing is clear: these are not generic decorations. Each helmet is different, which matches the idea that each head is a portrait of a specific person. A dynasty, a family line, a group of leaders. But if that's true, where is the writing? Where are the records? Where is the story of the people whose faces survive in stone? The Olmec left none. Their civilization appeared, built incredible monuments, influenced all later Mesoamerican cultures, and then vanished, leaving almost no written history behind. The faces, a controversial question. One of the biggest debates about the heads is their physical features. Many of them have broad noses, full lips, strong jawlines, almond-shaped eyes, and these traits don't match later Mesoamerican styles. Early explorers in the 19th century suggested that the faces resembled people of African or Polynesian descent. This led to theories of ancient transoceanic contact, a taboo idea that mainstream scholars reject today. They argue that human variation can explain the features without exotic theories. But here is the real mystery. Why do the heads look nothing like the rest of Olmec art? Small Olmec figurines and carvings look very different. These colossal heads stand alone. Destruction, denial, and rediscovery. When the Spanish arrived in the 1500s, they saw some of these giant stones being dug out of the jungle, and they destroyed many of them, not because the stones were dangerous, but because they challenged the church's version of history. If civilizations in the Americas were advanced long before European contact, the timeline didn't match biblical chronology. So the Spaniards buried them again, broke them apart, used them for construction material, ground them down to make lime. Whole pieces of the Olmec legacy were erased. By the time modern archaeologists rediscovered them, some were half-buried, others heavily weathered, others relocated by ancient hands for reasons still unknown. In fact, excavation teams in the 1950s discovered that some heads were deliberately buried by the Olmec themselves, as though the civilization wanted to hide them, or protect them, or retire them in a ritual only they understood. What were they guarding? At La Venta, the largest Olmec ceremonial center, the heads were arranged along a central axis, aligned with other massive structures and mysterious jade mosaics buried underground. These weren't random placements. They formed a pattern, a layout, a message, something the Olmec wanted future generations to see if they ever uncovered the site again. But when the Olmec civilization collapsed around 400 BC, the meaning of the heads disappeared with them. And today, we're left with the same questions. Who were these people? How did they carve and move these giants? Why did they destroy or bury some of them? And what was the purpose behind these enormous portraits? The mystery stands today. Some of the heads are preserved in open-air museums. Others still sit half-submerged in the jungle, slowly sinking into the earth. Researchers continue to study tool marks, quarry origins, and chemical composition, hoping for answers. But the truth remains unchanged. The Olmec colossal heads should not exist. Not at that time, not with their tools, not with their technology. Yet there they are, silent, massive, and unexplainable. Proof that the ancient world was far more advanced, far more mysterious, and far more forgotten than we realize. The Vinland map, the document that was never meant to exist. There are some discoveries that cause excitement, some that cause confusion, and a rare few that cause fear. Fear not of danger, but of disruption. Fear that the discovery might rewrite what humanity believes about itself. The Vinland map is one of those discoveries. A fragile, yellowed sheet of medieval parchment that appeared in Europe in the mid-1900s and immediately threatened to break history in half. Because this map didn't just challenge one detail of the past, it challenged the foundation of an entire era. The age of discovery, Columbus, exploration, the New World, all of it rested on a single belief. Europe didn't know about North America before 1492, but this one map said otherwise, and the world was not ready for that. The unexpected map, the Vinland map, is small, plain, almost unimpressive at first glance. It's only a little larger than a sheet of notebook paper, lines of faded ink showing continents, oceans, and coastlines familiar to any medieval cartographer. Except for one thing. On the far left edge of the page, across the Atlantic from Europe, lies a faint coastline labeled with a single, haunting word: Vinland. To most people today, Vinland is the territory described in Viking sagas, a land of wild grapes and forests, believed to be somewhere near modern-day Newfoundland. The sagas suggested that Norse explorers reached North America centuries before Columbus, but until the 1960s, historians considered these tales poetic exaggerations, not literal truth. Then this map surfaced. Drawn around the year 1440, according to early analysis, more than 50 years before Columbus set sail, it clearly showed North American land. If true, the discovery was explosive. It meant that medieval Europeans not only knew about North America but had mapped it. It meant the age of discovery wasn't a beginning, it was a continuation. It meant history was wrong, and that couldn't go unchallenged. The origin story, or the illusion of one, the Vinland map, came to light in the 1950s, when a mysterious manuscript dealer quietly approached scholars with a bundle of old documents. Among them was a medieval text known as the Tartar Relation, a legitimate 15th century account of the Mongol Empire. Bound inside it, as if part of the same ancient volume, was the map. This pairing made the story believable. The Tartar Relation was authentic. Its parchment and ink were medieval. So whoever bound the map inside either believed the map was genuine or wanted it to look genuine. Yale University purchased the map in 1957 but waited until 1965 to announce it publicly. When they did, the world reacted instantly. Newspapers called it the map that rewrites history. Scholars argued in academic journals. Museums rushed to display images of it. For a moment, it felt like the past was changing right before everyone's eyes. But history rarely changes without resistance. The questions begin from the beginning. Critics doubted the map's authenticity. They questioned, why was the map bound inside a manuscript with no mention of it? Why had no similar map appeared before? Who owned it before Yale? Why was the coastline so accurate? But despite doubts, one detail made the map especially compelling: Greenland. On the Vinland map, Greenland is drawn as a separate island not connected to Europe or Asia. That is correct. But medieval Europeans did not know that. They believed Greenland was a peninsula attached to a larger continent. No other map before the 1600s shows Greenland as an island. So how did this anonymous 15th century mapmaker know a fact that wouldn't be confirmed for centuries? It was either evidence of advanced exploration or evidence of a forgery so perfect it defied belief. Either option was unsettling. But then came the first scientific tests. The ink that should not exist in 1972. A study of the map's ink revealed something strange: traces of titanium dioxide, a compound not used in ink until the 20th century. Immediately, scholars declared the map a fake. Case closed, they said. But nothing about the Vinland map is ever simple. Years later, researchers found trace amounts of the same compound in other medieval manuscripts, possibly from contamination, environmental exposure, or later restoration. So the ink test didn't prove anything. It only deepened the uncertainty. Then in the 1990s, radiocarbon dating entered the picture. The parchment of the map, the physical material, was dated to around 1434 AD. Not modern, not medieval fantasy, but real. For a forgery to succeed, someone would have to find blank medieval parchment, perfectly recreate medieval drawing techniques, produce a highly accurate map of North America, and intentionally hide it in a manuscript collection. This made the map seem real again. So which was it? A brilliant forgery, a genuine relic, or something in between? The discovery at aux Meadows. Just when debate over the map seemed to cool, something happened that changed everything. In 1960, two Norwegian researchers discovered aux Meadows, a Viking settlement in Newfoundland. Carved timber buildings, iron nails, tools, all unmistakably Norse. Suddenly, the Viking sagas were not myths. They were memories. And the Vinland map didn't seem impossible anymore. Maybe medieval Europeans did know about North America. Maybe explorers returned with stories. Maybe those stories survived long enough to be drawn on parchment. For decades, the map sat like a ghost hovering between truth and forgery. Then, unexpectedly, Yale made a final announcement. The 2021 declaration and the controversy around it in 2021, Yale University officially declared the Vinland map a modern fake after conducting advanced pigment analysis. Their conclusion was firm. The ink contained modern compounds that could not be medieval, but the timing of this announcement raised questions. Why now? Why so quietly? Why with limited access to the raw data? Researchers involved in the testing were bound by non-disclosure agreements. Independent scholars were not allowed to examine the map directly. The original testing samples were reportedly discarded, and soon after the announcement, the map was removed from public display. No more exhibits, no more press releases, just silence. This itself became part of the mystery. Was the map truly exposed as a forgery? Or was Yale simply tired of the controversy and wanted it buried literally and academically? The secrecy only fueled suspicion. The paradox, real parchment, modern ink to this day, the strangest part of the Vinland map is this contradiction. One, the parchment is genuinely medieval. It dates to the 1400s. Two, the ink, according to Yale, is modern, likely 20th century. So either someone used medieval parchment to create a fake map in the early 1900s, or an older map was retouched or altered in modern times, or contamination skewed the ink results, or the truth is far stranger. If the map was retouched, what did the original look like? If it was forged, why was the geography so accurate? If it was real, why keep it hidden? Every answer raises more questions. Access restricted, the map BECOMES, a secret. One fact is undeniable. Few people today will ever see the Vinland map in person. It is kept under strict conservation conditions. Requests to study it are often denied. High-resolution scans are limited. Testing is tightly controlled. Whether these restrictions exist to protect the artifact or to protect the narrative depends on who you ask. To some scholars, the map is a historical curiosity, interesting but irrelevant. To others, it is the most suppressed archaeological document in modern history. Because if the map is real, even partially, it changes everything. It means Europeans reached North America long before Columbus. It means knowledge traveled across the world in ways we do not yet understand. It means the medieval world was more connected, more advanced, and more global than textbooks suggest. And that threatens long-standing academic traditions. The final question: what is the truth? The Vinland map sits at a crossroads between fact and fiction. Its story includes proven Viking settlements in North America, medieval parchment, modern ink signatures, restricted access, institutional secrecy, inconsistent test, results missing provenance, and the most accurate pre-Columbian depiction of North America ever known. So what is the truth? A brilliant modern forgery, a medieval map altered in later centuries, or a document someone wanted hidden for generations? No one can say for certain. What we do know is this: the Vinland map refuses to die. Every test, every announcement, every claim only brings more questions. It remains one of the most mysterious and controversial documents ever discovered. A single fragile sheet of parchment that continues to haunt the timeline of human exploration and may hold secrets we are still not allowed to uncover. There are places on this planet where the past is not gone, where it isn't buried under sand or locked behind museum glass, where it isn't decoded, classified, or explained by textbooks. There are places where the past is alive, where it breathes through ancient stone, where it stares back at us, where it still carries its own laws, laws older than civilization, older than writing, older than recorded history itself. One of these places lies in the far north of Western Australia, in a wild and remote region known as the Kimberley. A land of red cliffs and monsoon rains, a land of hidden caves, giant plateaus, and endless gorges. A land that has been continuously inhabited for tens of thousands of years. And deep within this landscape, painted on remote cave walls and rocky shelters, are some of the most mysterious and protected images on Earth. Figures that Aboriginal elders say are not art at all. Figures they say are alive. Figures they call the Wandjina. Where the sky meets the earth, the Kimberley is one of the last great frontiers. Much of it cannot be reached by road. Some caves can only be accessed by helicopter, by long treks through crocodile-filled rivers, or not at all. For the traditional Aboriginal groups, the Warora, Wanambal, and Gombera peoples, this region is more than a homeland. It is a sacred map of creation, stretching back to what they call the dreaming, the time when the world was formed. And according to their stories, the Wandjina were there at the beginning. They were the sky beings who came down from the clouds. They brought laws, knowledge, rain, fertility, and life. They shaped the land and taught the people how to live upon it. And when their work was done, they left their images on the cave walls, not as decorations, but as manifestations, as permanent presences, as reminders that they still watch over the land. These images are unlike anything else in the ancient world. The faces that glow on stone when explorers first saw the Wandjina paintings in the early 1900s, they were stunned by their appearance. The figures were tall, front-facing, almost ghost-like, painted in thick white pigment that seemed to glow against the red sandstone. The Wandjina have large round or oval heads, giant black eyes, no mouths, halos, rings, or radiating lines around their heads, lightning-like patterns surrounding them. To the Aboriginal peoples, these symbols represent clouds, storms, rain, and cosmic energy. The Wandjina are the keepers of water. They are the bringers of the wet season. They are the balance between earth and sky. But to outsiders, their appearance triggered different reactions. Some early explorers thought they looked angelic. Others said they resembled spirits or supernatural beings. And some, especially in the 20th century, said they looked strangely like astronauts. Tall, white, round-headed, wide-eyed, surrounded by what looked like helmets, halos, or luminous fields. It's easy to see why. The Wandjina style is starkly unique. It does not resemble other Aboriginal art, which traditionally uses dots, cross-hatching, or animal forms. Instead, the Wandjina appear more like portraits of visitors, and the people who painted them insisted they were exactly that. An art form that never changed. Most ancient art evolves over time. Techniques improve, styles shift, symbols change. But the Wandjina artwork is different. It has stayed almost completely unchanged for at least 5,000 years. Archaeologists studying the Kimberley region have dated some Wandjina sites to around 3,800 BCE, but Aboriginal oral history says they are older, much older. For them, the images were not invented. They were revealed. Even today, Aboriginal custodians repaint the Wandjina figures every generation, not to alter them, not to reinterpret them, but to keep them alive. They repaint them exactly as their ancestors did, preserving the same proportions, shapes, colors, and lines. This is not art for the sake of beauty. It is a sacred duty. If the paintings fade, the balance of the world is affected. The rains may not come. The land may grow sick. The spirits may grow restless. So the Wanjana are maintained carefully and ceremonially, following strict spiritual laws, and outsiders are not allowed anywhere near the process. The mystery of the pigment. One of the most surprising details about the Wanjana paintings is how well preserved they are. Many still appear bright, crisp, and clean, despite being exposed to monsoons, intense heat, humidity, and the passing of millennia. How? The pigment itself adds to the mystery. Scientists who examined the Wanjana paintings found no modern binding agents, no adhesives, no resins, no synthetic chemicals, no clear explanation for their durability. The paint appears to merge with the stone itself, almost as if the rock absorbs it and releases moisture through it, creating a natural preservation process, unlike any other known in ancient rock art. Some researchers compared the technique to a form of mineral bonding. Others suggested that environmental conditions in the caves helped preserve the images. But none of these explanations fully account for the freshness of the white pigment. It is a technique we still do not fully understand. A technique that may have been used for thousands of years by people who left no written record, yet possessed a subtle knowledge of materials we cannot replicate. A sacred secret, off limits to the world today. The Wanjana remain among the most restricted ancient images on Earth. Many of the sites are completely off-limits to outsiders. Some caves forbid photography or filming. Others can only be visited with the permission of Aboriginal elders, permission rarely granted. Scholars have tried for decades to analyze the Wanjana more closely. Requests for high-resolution scanning, deep pigment sampling, dating with advanced technology, digital mapping of the cave interiors have all been rejected by the traditional custodians. Their response is always the same. This knowledge is not for science, it belongs to the land. To Western archaeologists, this can be frustrating. To the Aboriginal peoples of the Kimberley, it is simply the law, a law older than any government or any field of study. The Wanjana are not artifacts. They are beings. They are guardians. They are sacred. And they are not to be disturbed. A modern controversy, the painting that crossed the line in 2017. A public controversy erupted in Australia that revealed just how seriously the Wanjana traditions are still protected. A Sydney street artist, unaware of the cultural laws, painted a Wanjana-inspired mural on a city wall. The artwork went viral online, but it also caught the attention of the Warora people. To them, this wasn't just disrespect, it was a violation. Reproducing the Wanjana outside its proper context is forbidden. Interpreting or altering its design is forbidden. Commercializing it is forbidden. Aboriginal leaders demanded the mural be removed immediately. The artist apologized. The city complied. And the world received a rare reminder. The Wanjana are not symbols to borrow. They are not designs to remix. They are not relics to analyze. They are living sacred beings whose image is tightly controlled by the only people who have the right to speak for them. The feeling of being watched. The few researchers who have been allowed to enter Wanjana caves describe something unusual. The air inside feels heavy, almost electric. The silence is absolute. The white figures seem to glow from within the stone. Their eyes, large, dark, unblinking, appear to follow every movement. Some visitors describe feeling watched. Others describe a sense of unease. A few report an overwhelming awareness of presence, not psychological, but physical. To the Aboriginal peoples, these reactions make perfect sense. The Wandjina are not representations. They are not metaphors. They are there. Their images are portals, not portraits. Their caves are places of power. Their eyes are the eyes of sky beings who never left. The scientific mystery remains even without accessing restricted sites. Researchers still study the Wandjina through allowed photographs and early sketches. And the same questions keep resurfacing. Why do the figures look so different from other ancient Aboriginal art? Why did this style remain unchanged for thousands of years? What inspired the halos, the radiating lines, and the round heads? How did the ancient painters preserve their pigment so perfectly? Why were no similar figures found outside the Kimberley? And the biggest question of all, what exactly did the first painters of the Wandjina see or believe they saw? Because their stories are clear, the Wandjina came from the sky. They arrived in the dreaming. They brought rain, law, knowledge, and life. They shaped the land. They interacted directly with people, and they left their images so they could be remembered forever. To Western researchers, these are myths. To the Aboriginal peoples, these are history. And for everyone else, the Wandjina remain a riddle, one wrapped in secrecy, protected by culture, preserved by tradition, and hidden deep within a landscape few outsiders will ever walk. The silent guardians of an ancient world, the Wandjina challenge the modern idea that ancient humans were simple or primitive. They reveal a civilization with a continuous culture lasting tens of thousands of years, a complex spiritual system, an artistic tradition unchanged for millennia, knowledge of pigments and preservation beyond our own, and a history guarded so carefully that even today, access is denied to the outside world. Most ancient mysteries are uncovered by archaeology. The Wandjina remain mysterious because archaeology is not allowed in. And perhaps that is what makes this particular ancient discovery so powerful. It is not forgotten. It is not lost. It is not erased by time. It is protected fiercely, intentionally, and forever. The Wandjina are the sky beings who shaped the land, gave life to the world, and still watch from the rocky shelters of the Kimberley. A mystery we cannot solve, a history we cannot rewrite, a past we are not allowed to touch. Before the pyramids rose from the sands of Egypt, before Babylon's gates towered over the desert, before writing, kingship, empires, or the first great cities, there was the Ubaid, a forgotten culture that lived in southern Mesopotamia long before the Sumerians, long before recorded history even began. They occupied the marshlands near the meeting of the Tigris and Euphrates around 5000–4000 BC, building the world's first villages, temples, irrigation systems, and social structures. But for all their achievements, one thing they left behind remains unlike anything else ever discovered in the ancient world: strange humanoid figurines with long faces, almond eyes, slender bodies, and reptilian heads. The Ubaid left no writing, no mythology, no records. Only these silent clay figures, the oldest known depictions of humanoid reptiles in human history. And they are as eerie today as they were when first unearthed. The first unearthing, a glimpse of something strange in 1919, British archaeologists excavating the mound of Tel al-Ubaid near the ancient Sumerian city of Ur uncovered something they did not expect. At first, the dig produced typical artifacts, pottery shards, tools, remains of simple homes. Nothing unusual. Then the team found a small clay statue. It had a human-like body but the head of a lizard, long snout, large slanted eyes, elongated skull, smooth scaled texture. And it wasn't alone. More figurines appeared, some male, some female, some holding infants that also had reptilian heads. Many wore what looked like tight-fitting caps, jewelry, or ornamental collars. Their bodies were slim, with thin limbs and delicate details sculpted into the clay. They did not resemble gods known from later Mesopotamian mythology. They did not resemble animals in the region. They did not resemble humans. They resembled something else. But what? A style too consistent to be random across different excavation sites. Eridu, Ur, Lagash archaeologists found similar reptilian figurines. Slight differences existed, but the overall design was unmistakable. Narrow, elongated heads slanted, almond-shaped eyes smooth or scaled skin, thin arms and legs, some seated, others standing, many wearing ceremonial or symbolic clothing, some in nurturing poses. Holding infants, the most striking detail is the consistency. These were not one-off artistic experiments. They were part of a tradition, a repeated, intentional representation of something or someone important to the Ubaid people. Yet the Ubaid left no writings to explain them, no temple inscriptions, no myths preserved on clay tablets. These figurines exist in silence, as if the story they belonged to was erased, lost, or never meant to be shared. The greatest puzzle, WHY reptilian. Cultures across the ancient world often mixed human and animal traits in their gods, but those choices made sense within their environment. Egyptians used falcons, cats, and crocodiles, animals common to the Nile. Indians used elephants, monkeys, and lions, animals native to the subcontinent. Greeks used bulls, horses, and serpents, animals familiar to the Mediterranean. But reptiles are not prominent in the Ubaid region. No lizard cults existed later in Mesopotamian religion. No serpent-bodied gods resembled the Ubaid statues. No cultural symbols explain why humans would be shown with reptile heads. This raises uncomfortable questions. Why would a prehistoric culture with no writing develop such a specific, strange iconography? Why depict reptilian beings in nurturing or authoritative positions? Why create so many figurines of the same unusual type? Archaeologists have theories. None fully satisfy. Theories that try and fail to explain one. Ritual or symbolic figures. Some scholars argue the figurines represent mythological beings or symbolic transformations, perhaps shamans wearing masks. But the faces of the statues do not look like masks. They look anatomical, biological, natural. If they were meant to be masked, why sculpt the features with such realism? 2. Artistic exaggeration. Another theory suggests the features are exaggerated human forms, a stylized art form. But the Ubaid created realistic pottery, tools, and other figurines. Why would they stylize only certain figures, and always in the same reptilian direction? 3. Early gods or demons. Some believe the statues depict forgotten deities. But Sumerian mythology, which followed the Ubaid, contains no reptilian gods resembling these figurines. Not one. 4. People with congenital conditions. A fringe theory suggests the elongated skulls or facial features reflect medical abnormalities. But that does not explain the reptile-like eyes, the consistent proportions, or why infants are depicted the same way. 5 visitors from somewhere else. This is not an academic explanation, but it is one often discussed outside archaeology. The figurines resemble depictions of reptilian or non-human beings found in distant cultures across the world. They appear humanoid, not animalistic. They are depicted with respect, not fear. This theory is impossible to prove, but it exists because archaeology has no better answer. The lost civilization behind the clay, the Ubaid people, were not primitive. They were innovators. Before the rise of Sumer, they developed organized irrigation, the first multi-room houses, long-distance trade networks, early temple structures, skilled pottery and crafts, social hierarchies, cultural continuity spanning centuries. They built sophisticated settlements like Eridu, often considered the world's earliest city. So the Ubaid were not experimenting blindly with clay. These figurines had meaning, deep meaning. Yet whatever they represented vanished when the Ubaid culture transitioned into early Sumerian civilization around 4000 BC. The reptilian imagery disappears completely. No later culture in Mesopotamia adopts it. No references survive. It is as if someone deliberately wiped the slate clean, or as if the beings they represented were no longer around. The figurines go missing. A modern mystery. More than half of the original Ubaid figurines have been lost, destroyed, or stolen. Many were housed in the Iraq National Museum in Baghdad, which suffered severe looting in 2003. Some artifacts were recovered. Many were not. Photos exist of the figurines before the museum was plundered, grainy, black and white images behind glass cases. But the actual statues are now scattered, missing, or in unknown private collections. Some researchers claim that entire sets of Ubaid figurines were never properly catalogued. Others say museums hid them because they sparked too much controversy. And others argue they were simply lost in bureaucratic confusion and war. Whatever the truth, access to the figurines is now extremely limited. This lack of access only deepens the mystery. The silence of scholars. One of the strangest things about the Ubaid figurines is how rarely archaeologists discuss them. They appear in old excavation reports, then fade from mainstream literature, then vanish almost completely from modern textbooks. Why? Some scholars dismiss them as unimportant. Others avoid them because they invite fringe theories about extraterrestrial visitors or reptilian beings. And some simply argue there is not enough evidence to form conclusions. But the silence creates a vacuum, a space for speculation to thrive. Why would a prehistoric culture mass-produce humanoid lizards? Why do the figurines show nurturing behavior, like mothers holding infants? Why did this imagery disappear so suddenly? And why were these figures found mostly in temples or ritual zones? These are questions archaeology cannot answer, and perhaps does not want to. A culture without a voice. The Ubaid culture left no writing. So everything we know comes from pottery, architecture, burial sites, tools, figurines. Their temples were simple but structured. Their homes were organized. Their villages were carefully planned. This was a stable, peaceful community with sophisticated engineering. Yet the figurines stand apart. They seem to document something important, something the Ubaid valued enough to preserve in clay over multiple generations. Were these deities, priest kings, spiritual guardians, mythic ancestors, something else entirely? The Ubaid left no clues. Their silence is total, and the figurines remain the only voice of a forgotten world, one we cannot translate. The ghosts of the first temples among the earliest temple complexes at Eridu. Archaeologists found Ubaid reptilian figurines deliberately buried beneath floors, placed in corners, or positioned near altars. This was not casual placement. It was ritual. It was intentional. It meant something. But without written records, the meaning is lost. The Ubaid may have worshipped gods who looked nothing like later deities, or they may have depicted beings they believed visited them. Or they may have created symbols now impossible to decode. The truth lies buried beneath the ruins of the world's first temples, and perhaps that is where the Ubaid wanted it to stay. The unsolved enigma today. Only a handful of Ubaid lizard figurines remain accessible to researchers. Most are damaged, worn, or incomplete. We cannot perform extensive chemical testing on them. We cannot compare them to a library of similar objects. We cannot interview the culture that created them. We are left with objects that should not exist, designs out of time and out of place, figures too consistent to be random, a culture advanced enough to be deliberate, a mystery. Archaeology cannot explain a silence that feels intentional, so the Ubaid lizard figures endure, ancient, eerie, forgotten by history, and yet utterly unforgettable. They challenge everything we think we know about the world's first civilizations. They suggest stories that vanished before writing was born. They remind us that not all mysteries are buried in deep caves or sealed behind stone doors. Some sit quietly in museum drawers. Some lie in ruins we barely understand. And some stare back at us with almond eyes from 5,000 years ago, asking a question we cannot answer. Who were the Ubaid trying to show us? Long before samurai, before emperors, before the first castle stones were laid in Japan, there existed another world entirely. A world older than rice agriculture, older than metal tools, older than writing, older than most civilizations on Earth. This was the world of the Jaman people, a prehistoric culture that flourished in Japan for more than 10,000 years, one of the longest continuous human cultures ever recorded. They lived in forests, fished along the coasts, crafted pottery older than the pyramids, and left behind one of the greatest archaeological mysteries in Asia, the Dagu, small clay figures. Often fragile, often broken, often unusual. But some look like nothing else from the ancient world, because many Dagu appear to be wearing helmets, goggles, armor plates, jointed suits, segmented surfaces like machine parts. The first time archaeologists saw them, they struggled to describe them. Even today, these figures remain one of the most puzzling and debated artifacts in ancient history. The first discoveries. A strange form emerges from the earth. The Dagu figurines first appeared in excavation sites during the late 1800s, when Japan was rapidly modernizing and beginning to study its ancient past. When researchers brushed away the soil from the first Dagu, they expected simple clay objects, maybe fertility icons or children's toys. What they found instead shocked them. Some Dagu looked vaguely human, others looked distinctly non-human, and some looked like beings sealed inside elaborate suits that resembled protective armor, pressure suits, or something else entirely. These were not basic clay dolls. They were sophisticated sculptures with precise shapes and patterns. As more Dagu came out of the earth, a pattern became clear. The Jaman people had created a type of figure that has no match anywhere else in the world. The appearance of the Dagu, too advanced. Two strange Dagu come in many shapes, but the most famous type, known as the Shakoki Dagu, has features that seem shockingly modern. Huge, round goggle-like eyes, helmet-like heads, thick, jointed limbs, armor-like patterns around the chest and shoulders, intricate designs resembling mechanical seams, and they were made by hand, not molds, with clay that was fired at temperatures high enough to require advanced kiln techniques. Even in their simplest forms, Dagu are highly detailed and carefully crafted. Some stand upright, some sit, some appear to dance or move. Some are broken on purpose, as if intentionally shattered in rituals. But the most important fact is this: no other prehistoric culture produced anything that looks even remotely like the Dagu. Not in Asia, not in Europe, not in Africa, not in the Americas. The Dagu are unique globally and historically. A culture without cities, yet with advanced art. One of the strangest things about the Dagu mystery is the context. The Jaman culture built no cities, constructed no pyramids, left no written records, created no large temples, lived mostly in small communities, yet their clay work is among the most advanced of any ancient people. They produced pottery with complex rope patterns. They created jewelry, tools, and ornaments with surprising precision. And they sculpted these mysterious Dagu figures with remarkable craftsmanship. Archaeologists still do not fully understand how such a non-urban society produced such sophisticated and futuristic-looking artifacts. It challenges the usual belief that complexity comes only with cities, writing, and kings. Here, in ancient Japan, complexity came from somewhere else, something else. What were the Dagu for? No one knows for certain. But scholars have theories, none complete, none satisfying. One, fertility or healing rituals. This is the most common explanation. Some Dagu have exaggerated hips or pregnant bellies, which suggests they may have symbolized fertility. Others were found intentionally broken, leading researchers to think they may have been used in sympathetic magic, breaking the figure to remove illness from a person. But this does not explain the helmet-like heads, the goggle-like eyes, the segmented armor-like torso, designs, the mechanical-like patterns, the consistent sci-fi appearance in later Dagu. The fertility explanation fits some, but not all. Two shamanic or spiritual representations. Some believe Dagu represent shamans in ceremonial attire, perhaps masks or body paint. But again, Dagu details seem far beyond clothing or ritual makeup. The suits appear protective, functional, engineered. And there's no evidence of such attire in Jaman burial sites. Three, early mythology or supernatural beings. Maybe the Dagu depict gods or spirits. But unlike later Shinto mythology, the Dagu do not match any known mythic beings. No gods in Japanese legend wear suits like this. No spiritual beings have giant round goggles. The Dagu stand alone, a mystery not linked to later belief systems. For something else, something we cannot categorize. This is the most controversial idea, but it is mentioned because it exists in public debate, that the Dagu depict beings the Jaman people actually saw or believe they saw. Beings in suits, beings with large eyes, beings not human. Academics do not accept this explanation, but they have no better alternative because none of the standard theories explain all the details. The technology behind the dagu, although the dagu are made of clay, their design suggests an understanding of symmetry, structural reinforcement, multi-stage, firing, layered construction, functional joint segmentation, microscopic analysis of some dagu revealed. Multiple firings at different temperatures, evidence of painted surfaces, intentional cracking, for ritual purposes hardened clay, that resists weathering unusually well. This level of craftsmanship is exceptional for a culture that existed thousands of years before writing reached Japan. It shows intention, precision, and possibly symbolic knowledge that we have not yet deciphered. The dagu that look alive, some dagu, do not look like people wearing suits. They look like entities whose bodies are the suits. Smooth, seamless, almost organic, with no visible hair, no clear gender, no human facial features other than eyes, and those enormous, goggle-like eyes dominate the face. The Shakoki dagu from Hokkaido is the most famous example. It has a rounded helmet-shaped head, perfectly symmetrical, circular eyes, a torso covered in swirling patterns, limbs shaped like armored tubes. To this day, this figure is one of Japan's national treasures, guarded with extreme care. When people see it for the first time, many say the same thing. This looks like an astronaut. The national restrictions, a cultural lockdown in Japan. Many dagu are designated important cultural properties, national treasures, regionally protected artifacts. Because of this, they cannot be exported, be sold, be removed from Japan, be scanned without permission, be studied freely, be touched by unauthorized researchers. Some dagu are locked away in climate-controlled vaults, brought out only for rare exhibitions. High-resolution images of certain dagu are restricted, and replicas are often used for museum displays. This is not because of mystery, but because Japan protects its ancient heritage fiercely. But this protection also means many dagu have never been fully analyzed, some have not undergone modern scientific testing, their deeper secrets remain hidden by strict regulations. The public only sees limited perspectives, and because of this, the dagu's origins remain clouded in uncertainty. A culture that ended with no explanation around 300–400 BC, the Jaman culture began to fade, replaced by the Yei culture, which introduced agriculture, metal tools, and a different way of life. With the arrival of Yei society, dagu stopped being made, rituals changed, artistic styles disappeared, the tradition vanished completely. Archaeologists have no clear explanation for why. There is no war evidence, no widespread destruction, no dramatic climate collapse. The dagu tradition simply ended abruptly. It is as if the need for these figures vanished overnight, or as if the beings they represented were no longer part of the world. The futuristic past, the dagu, challenge our assumptions about ancient people. They seem to show an awareness of form, a fascination with protective suits, an understanding of complex design and artistic vision, unlike anything else from prehistoric times. Across thousands of dagu, certain motifs repeat. Large, alien-looking eyes, helmet structures, body suits, mechanical-like patterns, symbolic lines and circles, figures frozen in action. It is this consistency across vast distances and centuries that makes the mystery so powerful. If these were simply toys, trinkets, or fertility icons, why do they all look so advanced? Why so detailed? Why so uniform? Why so futuristic? No one knows, and that is why the Dagu continue to fascinate researchers and the public alike. The enduring mystery today, more than 18,000 Dagu have been found across Japan. Most are simple, many are damaged, but a few stand out as masterpieces of ancient craftsmanship. And those few raise questions we still cannot answer. Who inspired the Dagu? What were they meant to represent? Why did the Jamin craft them with such complexity? Why do they look nothing like other ancient artifacts? Why did the tradition suddenly vanish? The Jamin left no explanation. They took their stories with them into the past. All we have now are the statues, silent, strange, powerful. The Dagu stand as reminders that the ancient world may have been far more imaginative, far more symbolic, and far more mysterious than we can understand. In their wide eyes and armored bodies, we see something impossible, the ancient future, a vision of the past that looks forward, a prehistoric memory that feels modern. And perhaps that is why the Dagu endure. They are relics of a world we have lost and a mystery we have yet to solve. Sometimes the greatest mysteries are not found beneath pyramids or inside ancient tombs. Sometimes they are hidden beneath the feet of everyday villagers, unnoticed for centuries, untouched, unrecorded, unknown. In the summer of 1992, in a quiet rural village in Zhejiang Province, eastern China, something extraordinary happened. Something that should have changed the textbooks instantly. Something that revealed the existence of a massive, sophisticated underground world that no ancient record had ever mentioned. It began with a simple, practical question. How deep is this pond? The villagers of Shi and Bacon had always lived beside several small, still ponds, dark pools of water that had existed for as long as anyone could remember. Children fished in them. Farmers collected water from them. They were ordinary features of village life. Until one day, curiosity sparked a chain of events that would uncover one of the greatest engineering mysteries on Earth. The draining of the pond, a secret below the water on June 9, 1992, villagers decided to pump water out of one of the ponds, believing it to be shallow and natural. But as the pumps ran for hours, then a day, then 2 days, something strange happened. The pond did not empty. There was far more water than anyone expected. Too much water. The pump kept working, but the water kept coming. Finally, after more than 3 days, the last of the water drained away. And that was when the villagers saw it. Not mud, not a natural depression, not the bottom of a pond, but a massive man-made cavern, carved walls, smooth pillars, precise angles, symmetrical chambers, patterns etched into stone. They had drained not a pond, but an ancient underground world, and this was only the beginning. Discovery multiplies, an entire network emerges when explorers entered the drain chamber. They found it enormous, far larger than anything the villagers imagined. But what shocked them even more was that the walls and ceilings bore uniform chisel marks, perfectly patterned in parallel lines. This was no accident of nature. This was engineering. The villagers immediately drained another pond. Another cavern appeared, then another, and another. Within a year, 24 massive caverns had been identified, each carved by human hands from solid sandstone. Some were the size of cathedrals. Some had pillars larger than tree trunks. Some were connected. Some stood alone. but all shared the same mysterious features: precision engineering, enormous scale, identical carved patterns, mysterious niches and platforms, complete silence in historical records. Archaeologists rushed to the site, astonished by what they found. The Longyu Caves, named after the region, had existed beneath the village for more than 2,000 years, untouched, unrecorded, and perfectly preserved beneath water. The mystery was only beginning. The scale, an impossible feat of ancient engineering. To understand why the Longyu Caves are so astonishing, you need to picture the scale. Each carved cavern is between 30–50 meters long, around 30 meters high, up to 20 meters wide, supported by massive stone columns, carved entirely by hand. Each cave required removing thousands of cubic meters of stone. The total stone removed from all 24 caves is estimated at over 1 million cubic meters. To put that in perspective, if modern workers carved these caves today using simple hand tools, it would take thousands of laborers working tirelessly for decades. If ancient workers used bronze or iron chisels, the effort would be staggering, far greater than many pyramid or temple projects from the same era. But the most confusing part: there is no debris, no piles of stone, no dump sites, no traces of removed material. Where did 1 million cubic meters of rock go? Archaeologists still cannot answer this question. The chisel marks, elegant, perfect, and impossible. One detail stands out in every Longyu cave. The walls, ceilings, and even the pillars are covered in fine, uniform parallel lines, like waves, like a machine smoothing stone, like a pattern repeated thousands of times with perfect consistency. To create this effect by hand would require extreme patience, precise coordination, identical tools, a consistent workforce, knowledge of aesthetics or symbolism. Why carve these lines into every surface? They serve no structural purpose. They add visual texture, but at enormous labor cost. And here's the real mystery: the patterns match carvings found inside Qin dynasty tombs, including the tomb of China's first emperor, dating to around 220 BC. Yet the Longyu caves are believed to be even older. This suggests a long-lost tradition of stoneworking, a technology or artistic practice that disappeared without explanation. No records, the silence that shouldn't exist. China is a civilization famous for its detailed records. For thousands of years, scholars documented events, constructions, ceremonies, and royal decrees in meticulous detail. But the Longyu caves, not a single historical record exists. No mention of their construction, no mention of their purpose, no mention of the massive workforce required, no myths, no legends, no folklore, nothing. Such silence is impossible, unless the caves were created by a forgotten culture, part of a secret project never intended to be public, abandoned suddenly, or repurposed long after their creators disappeared. No matter the explanation, the omission is shocking. How could a project of such size vanish entirely from history? Acoustic perfection, the strange sound of the caves. Another unexplained detail is the acoustics. Explorers noticed that sound behaves strangely inside the Longyu caves. Some corners amplify whispers, some areas produce deep echoes, some chambers swallow sound completely, some produce resonance like musical halls. This is unusual because the caves were not natural formations. Their shapes were carved intentionally. So were these acoustic effects accidental, symbolic, ritualistic, functional? If intentional, the builders understood sound dynamics on an advanced level. For a culture thousands of years old, that is extraordinary. The function of the caves, an unsolved riddle. Researchers have proposed theories about what the caves were used for. None explain all the facts. One, storage chambers. The caves are too elaborate. Their interiors would not protect food from humidity. Their size far exceeds storage needs. And again, no records. Two, living spaces. There are no smoke stains, fire pits, or living debris. The ceilings are too high for practical use. The niches and platforms seem ceremonial, not domestic. Three, military hideouts. There are no defensive features, no weapon storage, no fortification traces. Four, mines. This is unlikely because the stone is low value. There is no mining debris. The caves are two, symmetrical mines do not look like cathedrals. Five, tombs or burial halls. No bodies have ever been found. No funerary objects, no inscriptions, no signs of ritual burial. Six, ritual or ceremonial structures. The symmetry, the acoustic behaviors, and the carved patterns might support this. But again, there is zero documentation of any ceremonies taking place here. Seven, something unknown. Something beyond the usual categories. When a structure defies all known classifications, it forces a harder question. Were these caves created for a purpose we no longer understand? The water secret. How did the caves survive? For more than 2,000 years, the caves sat underwater, filled to the top. Yet, the ceilings remained intact, the carved lines stayed sharp, the walls did not erode, the structural pillars did not collapse. How did water not destroy these massive chambers? The villagers say the ponds were always full, even during droughts. Some researchers think underground springs fed the caves. Others believe engineers intentionally designed them to remain water-filled to preserve them. If the latter is true, the cave builders understood hydrostatic pressure and long-term preservation techniques far beyond typical ancient capabilities. This is engineering at a master level. The geometry, mathematics buried underground the caves follow. Precise right angles, consistent proportions, standardized pillar widths, smooth curvature, identical aesthetic patterns. This implies tools with standardized measurements, architectural planning, a team of skilled workers following a blueprint, leadership directing a large workforce. But how could such a massive operation produce 24 identical caves and leave zero historical footprint? It doesn't make sense. Unless the builders disappeared, or were erased, or predated the earliest known dynasties. The UNESCO visit. Global architects stunned when international experts visited Longyu. They were shocked. Some said the caves displayed engineering on par with Roman or Greek architecture design, knowledge far beyond Neolithic culture's structural features, requiring decades of planning, aesthetic choices, too deliberate to be industrial. Many could not believe such architecture existed in ancient China without any written record. Others suggested the caves represent a lost era, a period of architectural mastery unrecognized by mainstream history. But even these experts offered no explanation for the missing debris, the missing records, the advanced acoustic behavior. The purposeful parallel chisel marks the simultaneous construction of so many caves. The truth is, the Longyu caves challenge our understanding of early civilization. They simply should not exist, not at this scale, not at this age, not with this precision. The unsolved mystery of an ancient world today. Only a few of the caves are open to the public. The rest remain sealed, unsafe, or unexplored, their full depth still unknown. Scientists continue to investigate. Who built the caves, how long they took to construct, why they were made, how they stayed intact underwater, how such massive engineering left no trace in history. But decades of research have produced no definitive answers. Instead, the caves remain. Silent, perfect, massive, mysterious, a network of underground chambers carved by unknown hands more than 2,000 years ago, abandoned for reasons we cannot guess. The Longyou Caves stand as a reminder that even in a land with one of the oldest written histories on Earth, entire chapters of the past remain unwritten. And sometimes, those forgotten chapters sit just beneath the surface, waiting for a curious villager to drain a pond. In the Egyptian desert, about 20 miles south of Cairo, lies a place that even seasoned archaeologists describe with one word: impossible. Not mysterious, not unusual, impossible. Hidden beneath the sands of Saqqara, the vast necropolis of ancient Memphis, is a long, dark tunnel cut deep into the limestone bedrock. A tunnel that leads to a series of chambers, each containing an object so massive, so geometrically precise, and so technologically baffling that they should not exist in the ancient world. These objects are the sarcophagi of the Serapeum, enormous granite boxes, each weighing between 70 and 100 tons, carved with such perfection that modern engineers still argue about how they were made. The Serapeum is one of the most disturbing archaeological discoveries in Egypt. Not because of what was found inside the giant stone boxes, but because of what was not. Most of them were empty, no mummies, no remains, no inscriptions explaining their purpose, just silence. But to understand how strange the Serapeum truly is, we must begin with its rediscovery. A desert hollowed out by unknown hands in 1850, a French archaeologist named Auguste Mariette was exploring Saqqara when he noticed something unusual: the head of a sphinx poking out from beneath the sand. Following this clue, he uncovered an entire avenue of sphinx statues leading toward a hidden entrance sealed for millennia. Behind this entrance lay a long, descending passage that led deep underground. When Mariette's team lit torches and stepped inside, they were confronted with something they had never seen before: a massive tunnel, carved with mathematical precision and lined with chambers. Inside each chamber was a sarcophagus so large that Mariette could not imagine how ancient Egyptians had moved them into place. It was clear the Serapeum was not built casually. This was a deliberate, monumental project, engineered with incredible skill. But for what purpose? The answer, or rather the explanation offered by scholars, sounded simple. The Serapeum was the burial place of the Apis bulls, sacred animals worshipped in the Memphis region. But the deeper archaeologists explored, the less sense that theory made. The giant boxes, too big to be reasonable, each granite sarcophagus in the Serapeum, is a technological marvel. They measure up to 13 feet long, up to 8 feet wide, up to 11 feet tall, with walls nearly 2 feet thick. The lids alone weigh between 20 and 30 tons. They were carved from rose granite from Aswan, 500 miles away, diorite, one of the hardest stones on Earth, and these boxes were not dragged to ground level, but lowered into deep underground chambers carved from limestone. Think about that for a moment. Transport a 100-ton stone box 500 miles. Lower it down narrow tunnels. Fit it perfectly inside a chamber. Place a matching 30-ton lid on top. Achieve perfect symmetry with a tolerance of thousandths of an inch. All this using copper chisels, ropes, wooden sleds, and human labor. Even Egyptologists admit the Serapeum represents engineering that cannot be explained by the tools of the time. Precision that defies the ancient world. When modern engineers examined the Serapeum boxes, they were stunned. Using lasers and precision measuring tools, they found surfaces within 0.2 inches of perfect flatness, corners forming perfect right angles, interior surfaces polished to mirror-like smoothness, symmetry that rivals modern machine tooling, lids so perfectly cut they form airtight seals. This level of precision is difficult to achieve even with modern diamond cutting technology. So how did an ancient civilization accomplish it? Copper tools cannot cut granite. Sand abrasion is too slow and imprecise. Human-powered drills cannot produce such geometry. The truth is simple. We do not know. And this is where the mystery turns into something far more troubling. The purpose and the strange absence of remains. According to traditional Egyptology, the Serapeum was used to bury sacred Apis bulls, animals believed to be incarnations of the god Ptah. However, when the giant sarcophagi were opened, almost all of them were empty, unmarked, unused, uninscribed. There were no remains of bulls, no embalming materials, no grave goods, no hieroglyphs identifying the owner, no ceremonial inscriptions. In a civilization where everything was documented, even the burial of ordinary citizens, why would the Egyptians build enormous, ultra-precise boxes for animals and leave no record? Worse still, one reopened sarcophagus contained a few fragments of bone that did not match Apis bulls, and many boxes had never been opened in antiquity. If these were truly tombs, the lack of remains makes no sense, which means either these were not tombs or they were built for a purpose we do not understand. And once again, the silence of history hangs over the Serapeum. The underground labyrinth, engineering madness. The Serapeum's tunnel system stretches hundreds of meters underground. It contains long straight halls, side chambers cut with mathematical precision, blackened torch marks on the ceilings, extremely smooth floors, niches resembling tool storage areas, ventilation shafts, purpose unknown. The layout is too organized to be random. The construction too advanced to be ceremonial. The labor requirements too massive to be symbolic. To carve these tunnels, workers would have needed advanced mapping, architectural planning, knowledge of structural integrity, precise measurements, massive teams of stoneworkers. Even then, placing the sarcophagi into these underground chambers would have been nearly impossible. The tunnels are narrow. The corners are tight. The chambers are perfectly proportioned. How were the boxes maneuvered into place? If the caves were carved after the boxes were lowered, how did workers remove the excess stone without damaging the sarcophagi? If the caves were carved first, how did the workers lower 100-ton boxes into deep underground rooms without cranes, pulleys, or metal lifting mechanisms? Every scenario creates logistical contradictions. and every attempt at explanation only deepens the mystery. A hint of something older, some researchers suggest the Serapeum was not built during the time of the pharaohs at all, but inherited from an earlier, unknown civilization. Evidence supporting this idea includes the extreme precision of the granite boxes, the lack of inscriptions, the sudden appearance of advanced engineering, the absence of intermediate prototypes, the fact that similar cutting techniques do not appear elsewhere in the same era. Egyptologists disagree, but they have no definitive proof. The dating of the tunnels is uncertain. The dating of the sarcophagi is unclear, and there is no record of their construction. It is entirely possible the Egyptians reused structures that already existed, just as they did with the Great Sphinx megalithic ruins near Dendera, pre-dynastic stonework at Abydos, massive blocks at the Valley Temple. Egypt may preserve the memory of civilizations long erased. The Serapeum may be part of that forgotten lineage. The boxes themselves, a message in granite. When you stand before one of the Serapeum sarcophagi, you feel something strange. The scale is overwhelming. The craftsmanship is unreal. The silence is enormous. Some describe a sense of energy or presence or pressure, as if the stone itself holds memory. Inside the boxes, the air feels different. Sound behaves strangely. Your voice echoes sharply off the polished walls. These chambers feel less like tombs and more like containment units, energy chambers, resonance devices, protective housings, or vaults designed to hold something powerful. But whatever was meant to be inside them is not anymore. The mysterious sealed box. Inside one chamber of the Serapeum stands a box that has never been opened, not by archaeologists, not by grave robbers, not by anyone in recorded history. Its lid is perfectly sealed. Its joints are airtight. Its contents remain unknown. Egyptian authorities have refused requests to open it, citing preservation concerns. Why not use modern technology to scan it? Why not obtain samples? Why not determine its purpose? Their silence has led to rumors. Is it empty like the others, or does it contain something unusual, something archaeological, something dangerous, something they are not ready to reveal? No one knows. The sealed box remains untouched, a silent guardian in a silent tomb. What were they really for? If the Serapeum was not built to bury bulls, then what was it for? Scholars have proposed one, energy containment or resonance structures. The acoustic properties are unusual. The boxes create deep, powerful tones when struck. Sound waves behave differently inside them. 2, storage for sacred or forbidden objects. This could explain their strength and precision. 3, cenotaphs for unknown individuals, but their lack of inscriptions contradicts this. 4, a symbolic or ritual system, yet the engineering required far exceeds symbolic needs. 5, something we have not yet imagined, something outside our usual categories. The truth is simple: we do not know, and that is the mark of a true ancient mystery. The shadow of the Serapeum today, the Serapeum is open to visitors, at least partially. Many of its tunnels remain sealed due to structural instability. Other chambers remain unexplored. The boxes sit in near darkness. The air is cool and heavy. The silence feels alive. Walking through the Serapeum feels like walking into a secret the ancient world tried to keep. A secret carved in stone. A secret buried beneath sand. A secret we still cannot fully understand. The Serapeum challenges everything we think we know about ancient Egypt. Its technology, its capabilities, its history, its forgotten past, these massive granite boxes should not exist. Not with copper tools, not with simple sleds, not with unrecorded labor forces, not without inscriptions, not without purpose. And yet they do, silent, perfect, unexplainable. Across the vast forests of Russia, in the cold lands east of the Ural Mountains, lies a secret older than civilization, older than writing, agriculture, or the first temples of humanity, older even than the earliest pyramids or the first stones lifted at Stonehenge. A secret carved into wood, a material that almost never survives the passage of time. A face staring across 12,000 years, a message written before history began. This is the Shigir idol, the oldest wooden sculpture ever discovered and one of the most mysterious artifacts on Earth. At first glance, it is strange. At second glance, it becomes unsettling. And by the time you understand its age, its complexity, and what it suggests about a long-lost chapter of human history, it becomes something else entirely. A time capsule from a forgotten world. A message from people whose names we do not know. A riddle carved in wood from an age we barely understand. The accidental discovery, a statue born from a swamp in January of 1890. Miners working near Kirovgrad in the Ural region were clearing peat from a bog called the Shigir Moor. Peat bogs are strange places, cold, wet environments that preserve organic material almost perfectly. As miners dug deeper into the muck, their shovels hit something solid. At first, they thought it was a tree trunk. Then they cleaned it. Then they realized they were holding something extraordinary, carved wood, far larger and more detailed than any prehistoric artifact they had ever seen. Piece by piece, the workers recovered fragments of a massive wooden idol, carved with geometric patterns, strange faces, and mysterious symbols. The miners had no idea they had just uncovered one of the oldest artistic creations ever made by human hands. What they found, a giant from the past when the pieces were cleaned and assembled in a museum, archaeologists were stunned. The completed statue was more than 17 feet tall in its original form, carved from a single larch tree, decorated on all sides, covered in mysterious markings, displaying multiple faces, stacked vertically, far more complex than anything expected from prehistoric hunter-gatherers even today. Nothing like the Shigir idol exists anywhere else in the world. The idol originally had 8 faces, some human-like, some abstract, some unlike anything recognizable. Its body was covered in zigzags, chevrons, lines, and symbols that appear intentional, organized, and meaningful. But the most incredible fact was still unknown: its age. Early researchers assumed the idol was maybe 3,000 years old, ancient, yes, but not groundbreaking. They were wrong by almost 10,000 years. The dating, a timeline shattered in the late 20th century, scientists decided to radiocarbon date the Shigir idol. Their results shocked the world. 9,500 years old, which already made it older than every pyramid, older than every early city, older than nearly every known human monument. But this was only the first test. In 2015, more advanced AMS radiocarbon dating pushed the age back even further, 11,000 years old. Then in 2018, new samples revealed the true age, 12,000 years old. This means the Shigir idol was carved, Near the end of the last ice age, when woolly mammoths were still roaming, before agriculture existed, before metal tools, before settled villages, before the rise of civilizations, this idol belongs to a time when most humans were nomadic hunter-gatherers. Yet its complexity suggests a symbolic system far beyond what we associate with prehistoric tribes. The idol is now believed to be twice as old as the Egyptian pyramids and older than the first stones at Göbekli Tepe. The Shigur idol is the world's oldest surviving example of monumental sculpture, and it should not exist. Not at that time, not at that scale, not with that level of symbolic sophistication. The mysterious symbols, what do they mean? The surface of the idol is covered in markings, not random scratches, not accidental patterns, but deliberate, repeating symbols. Zigzags, cross-hatching, chevrons, straight lines, flowing lines, sideways M-shapes, ladder-like compositions, and faces with haunting, expressionless eyes. Experts have proposed several theories about these symbols. One, a map of the spiritual world. Some archaeologists believe the symbols represent a spiritual hierarchy, layers of existence or realms stacked one above the other. The multiple faces could be guardians of different realms. The patterns could show movement between worlds. This would make the idol a kind of cosmic roadmap, a guide for understanding the universe. 2, a set of laws or principles. Some researchers think the idol may contain a coded set of rules, warnings, instructions, or myths carved into wood. This would make it the earliest known form of symbolic communication, predating writing by thousands of years. 3, a story of transformation. Others think the markings show a sequence, like a story unfolding vertically from bottom to top. But without the culture who made it, we cannot read the message. 4, art for ritual purposes. A more cautious theory is that the idol served a ritual function. But even this does not explain the complexity, the scale, the multiple faces, the geometric patterns. Its survival in oral culture for millennia. The Shigur idol is too detailed to be simple ritual art. 5, a warning from the past. One controversial theory suggests the idol may depict events from the end of the Ice Age, perhaps environmental changes or dangers remembered by early humans. The zigzag patterns resemble water or destruction. The faces may represent beings of power or ancestors. This theory cannot be proven, but it aligns with the idol's age, which places its creation during a time of dramatic climate shifts. The multiple faces, who are they? Perhaps the most striking feature of the Shigur idol is its faces. Carved along the length of its body, some are rectangular, square, sharp, simple, abstract, but all have deep, hollow eyes that seem to look through time. No one knows who these faces represent: gods, ancestors, spirits, guardians, symbolic archetypes. Some faces appear angry, some appear neutral, some appear almost animal-like. The layering of faces may indicate levels of importance or different aspects of a single being. It is unlike anything else discovered from that time. In most Ice Age cultures, human depictions were simple and rare. The Shigur idol, by contrast, is sophisticated and symbolic. It suggests a belief system far more complex than expected for hunter-gatherers. A larch tree older than time, the idol was carved from the trunk of a larch tree at least 157 years old. This means the tree itself began growing around 13,800 BC, near the end of the Ice Age. Think about that. The wood used for the idol began growing before humans invented agriculture. The Shigir idol is not just ancient, it is prehistoric in the deepest sense. It is a voice from a time when the world looked nothing like today. The lost art, where are the others? One of the most disturbing questions is simple. If the Shigir idol exists, where are the rest? Wood normally decays. Wood disappears. Wood rots away in just a few centuries. So the idol survived only because it was intentionally placed in a peat bog preserved by cold, acidic water sealed away from oxygen and bacteria. This implies the idol was meant to be buried, it was hidden intentionally, it was placed where it would not be found. If this is true, then the Shigir idol may represent a tradition, not a single creation. There could have been dozens, hundreds, an entire forest of idols, each telling a story. But they are gone, swallowed by time. The Shigir idol may be the only survivor of a symbolic culture older than civilization itself. The controversy, scholars resist the truth when the true age of the idol was announced. Some scholars rejected the results immediately, not because the science was wrong, but because the implications were too uncomfortable. If the idol is truly 12,000 years old, it means Ice Age hunter-gatherers created symbolic art as complex as early farmers. Humans developed abstract thinking far earlier than believed. Complex belief systems existed long before cities. Our timeline of cognitive evolution is flawed. A culture with advanced symbolic understanding may have been lost. In other words, the idol forces archaeology to rewrite human history, and many resist rewriting. Some researchers argued the idol must be younger, others questioned the dating process. Some claim the complexity was too advanced. But new tests continue confirming the same age. The idol is real, its age is real, its implications are real, and that scares people. The message no one can read. Perhaps the most haunting thing about the Shigir idol is this: it has a message, a story, a meaning, but we cannot read it. The symbols are part of a symbolic system older than any known writing. They do not match runes. They do not match pictographs. They do not match proto-writing in other parts of the world. The idol is a book written in a language we will never decipher, a message sent across 12,000 years, but delivered to a world that has forgotten how to understand it. The oldest witness to a lost age today, the Shigir idol stands in a museum in Yekaterinburg, a towering figure reconstructed from the fragments rescued from the bog. Visitors describe feeling uneasy when they stand near it. Some feel watched, some feel humbled, some feel a strange sadness, as if the idol remembers something the world has forgotten. The Shigir idol is more than an artifact. It is a doorway, a whisper, a shadow of a world erased by time. It tells us that humanity was creating meaning, myth, art, and possibly even spiritual systems long before civilization began. And it hints at an ancient knowledge, a symbolic intelligence, that disappeared without leaving anything behind except this one silent witness. A witness to a time when nature was alive with spirits, when the world was dangerous and beautiful, when humans carved their stories into wood instead of stone, and when a single large tree was chosen to bear a message meant to echo across the ages. We heard the echo, but we no longer speak the language. There are discoveries that raise eyebrows. There are discoveries that spark debate. And then there are discoveries that the scientific world refuses to touch, discoveries that sit in sealed museum rooms, whispered about but rarely discussed in public. One such discovery lies in the small city of Acambaro in central Mexico, a quiet place surrounded by hills and farms, a place with no pyramids like Teotihuacan, no ancient ball courts, no monumental temples. Yet in 1945, something happened there that made archaeologists furious, historians uncomfortable, and the public completely fascinated. A local man named Waldemar Julsrud claimed to have found thousands of strange clay figurines beneath the earth, figurines unlike anything in known Mesoamerican culture. Some looked human, some looked animal, some looked mythological, and some looked like dinosaurs. Yes, dinosaurs. Not crude shapes, not imaginative creatures, but detailed figures with horns, plates, spikes, long tails, and anatomies that closely match what paleontologists would confirm decades later. More than 33,000 figurines were eventually unearthed. And today, almost 80 years later, these objects remain one of the most controversial archaeological finds on Earth. The discovery, a chance encounter in the Hills, it all began on a hot July morning in 1945. Waldemar Julsrud, a German-born shop owner living in Mexico, was riding his horse along the slopes of El Toro Hill, a quiet, dusty hill overlooking Acambaro. As he looked down, he noticed pieces of pottery sticking out of the ground. This wasn't unusual. Many ancient cultures once lived in the region, but the shapes of these fragments were unusual curves that did not belong to typical bowls or jars. Something more sculptural, more expressive. Julsrud asked a local worker, Odilon Tinajero, to investigate. He offered to pay for each intact figurine recovered. Tinajero began digging. Days passed, then weeks, then months, and the figurines kept coming. Human figures, animal figures, hybrid figures, gigantic figures, microscopic ones, creatures with wings and creatures with scales, warriors and monsters. By the time the excavation slowed, more than 33,500 artifacts had been pulled from the shallow soil. This was not the work of a single potter or a single generation. This was a tradition, a culture, a story system spanning centuries. But the strangest part was what the figurines depicted. The shapes of an unknown world. The Acambaro collection is unlike anything else in archaeology. It contains human figurines. Some appear ordinary, farmers, women, warriors. Others look ceremonial, dressed in robes or masks. Hybrid figures, creatures with human bodies and animal heads, animal bodies with human faces, combinations of species that do not exist today. These hybrids resemble mythological beings from cultures all over the world, but not specifically Mesoamerican. Giant figures. Some figurines stand much taller than others, representing huge humanoid beings. Their purpose is unknown. Creatures that look like dinosaurs. This is the most controversial part. Among the figurines are dozens, possibly hundreds of figures that resemble sauropods, ceratopsians, stegosaurs, theropods, creatures with plated backs, creatures with frills and horns. Some depict humans riding the creatures. Others show humans battling them. Others show them peacefully coexisting. At first glance, they look impossible. Dinosaurs and humans never coexisted. Our understanding of prehistory says they missed each other by 65 million years. So how did these figurines appear here? The standard explanation is hoax. But the deeper you dig into the Acambaro story, the harder that explanation becomes to maintain. A hoax too big to be possible. Skeptics argue the figurines were faked by local workers trying to earn money from Julsrud. But this theory raises many problems. One, the quantity: over 33,000 artifacts were found. Could one man, or even a small team, produce thousands of sculptures, all in consistent style in a short time? Especially with no modern equipment, no kilns, and no training. Highly unlikely. Two, the style diversity: the figurines span multiple artistic styles, techniques, and symbolism systems. A single modern artist faking them would need decades, perhaps a lifetime, to produce such variety. Three, the aging process: some figurines show mineral deposits, patina, and weathering that point to burial over long periods. A quick fake would not produce such aging. Four, the anatomical accuracy: many dinosaur figurines show details that scientists did not know in 1945, such as the correct posture of certain species, the correct skull shapes, plates arranged in patterns later confirmed by fossil studies, the correct tail structures in 1945. Children's books and early museum displays often show dinosaurs dragging their tails on the ground. But many Akambaro figures show tails lifted, the correct posture, confirmed decades later. How would forgers know this? 5, the soil layers: when archaeologists later investigated the site, they found figurines beneath undisturbed soil layers that would be almost impossible to fake. 6, no financial motive: the workers who found the figurines earned pennies. They did not sell the figurines. They did not advertise the discovery. The town was poor and remote, no tourists were coming. So why create thousands of fake objects for no market? This question remains unanswered. Scientific tests: results that caused disputes throughout the 20th century. Researchers attempted to date the figurines using various methods. The 1960s thermoluminescence test. One test suggested the artifacts were 2,500 to 4,500 years old. This would place them well within the timeline of early Mesoamerican cultures, impossible to fake. However, critics argued the sample was contaminated. The testing lab retracted the results. The controversy deepened. Later tests, other dating attempts produced mixed results. Some tests suggested genuine antiquity. Others claimed modern origin. Some samples were too contaminated to test accurately. The unclear results left the figurines in archaeological limbo. And when science does not produce clear answers, opinions tend to split fiercely. The archaeological backlash: an unusual level of anger. What made the Akambaro discovery so controversial was not just the figurines themselves, it was the reaction to them. Instead of curiosity, many archaeologists responded with outright rejection, not skepticism, not caution, but hostility. Why? Because the figurines, if genuine, raise questions that shake the foundations of archaeology. How did ancient people know what dinosaurs looked like? Why are the figurines so widespread and numerous? What culture produced them? Where is the missing civilization implied by their sophistication? Why do they contradict our timeline of prehistory? Rather than confront these questions, many institutions simply labeled the entire discovery as fraudulent. But this dismissal raises its own question. If it was so obviously fake, why did scholars react so aggressively? Because sometimes the simplest way to avoid rewriting history. is to refuse to read the evidence. The case of the sealed collection today, more than 33,000 figurines sit in storage in a Kambaro small museum. They are rarely displayed. They are not promoted. They are not studied openly. They are not photographed in detail for international analysis. Why? Some say the collection is too controversial, and officials fear attracting fringe theories. Others believe institutions do not want to reopen a debate that threatens established timelines. And some point out that the figurines simply do not fit into any known cultural tradition, making them an archaeological orphan. Whatever the reason, the figurines remain mostly hidden from the world. Who created them? If the figurines are not a hoax, who made them? The answer is unknown. There is no identified culture in the region that made such figurines, used that symbolism, had such diverse artistic style, created works in that quantity, produced dinosaur-like forms. But here are clues. 1. The region was inhabited for thousands of years. Many groups passed through central Mexico long before the Aztecs. 2. The figurines show cultural mixing. Some designs resemble Olmec styles. Some resemble Chupicuaro traditions. Some resemble something far older. 3. The diversity suggests a long tradition. One artist cannot explain thousands of styles. A long-lasting culture can. 4. The location hints at lost settlements. Archaeologists have not fully explored the hills around a Kambaro. More remains may be hidden. 5. The figurines may preserve ancient storytelling. Perhaps they depict myths, legends, or symbolic creatures, not literal animals. If so, the dinosaur-like figures may represent ancestral memories or mythic interpretations of fossils. But this does not explain their anatomical accuracy. The truth remains elusive. The parallels, similar images around the world. One reason the Kambaro figures fascinate researchers is that they have parallels across distant cultures. Egyptian carvings showing unknown animals, Mesopotamian cylinder seals with strange creatures, Chinese dragons resembling dinosaur forms, Native American legends of thunderbirds, and ancient reptiles, South American petroglyphs showing tall, scaled creatures. Do these parallels prove anything? No. But they suggest that ancient people everywhere had myths or memories involving creatures that resembled long-extinct species. Why? We don't know, but a Kambaro adds fuel to that mystery. The strangest figurines, human-dinosaur interactions among the thousands of artifacts. Some figurines stand out. Humans riding creatures with plates and spikes, humans hunting long-necked reptiles, humans standing beside triceratops-like beings, humans touching or interacting peacefully with reptilian giants. Are these depictions symbolic, metaphorical, mythical, or were they depicting something they believed was real? We cannot know, but the images are compelling and unexpected. What if they are real? If we assume for a moment that the figurines are authentic and ancient, then several possibilities emerge. 1. The creators discovered dinosaur fossils. They may have studied bones and imagined what the creatures looked like. But the accuracy of the figurines exceeds what fossil interpretation alone would provide. 2. They inherited ancient myths. Stories of giant reptilian creatures may have survived in oral tradition. 3. They created symbolic art. The creatures may represent forces or spirits, not real animals. 4. They recorded something we do not yet understand. something outside our current framework of history. This is the possibility that makes archaeologists uncomfortable, not because it is impossible, but because it is unknown. The enduring mystery, the Acambaro figurines remain trapped between two worlds, too complex and numerous to be a simple hoax, too controversial to be accepted as genuine, too strange to explain, too detailed to ignore. They challenge our understanding of prehistoric art, cultural development, symbolic expression, the limits of historical knowledge, and above all, they remind us that the ancient world still holds secrets that do not fit neatly into the stories we tell today. Perhaps one day new evidence will emerge. Perhaps the hills of Acambaro still hide answers. Perhaps the figurines were meant to tell a story we have forgotten. For now, they sit in silence, tens of thousands of them, eyes carved in clay, shapes from another time, waiting for someone brave enough to listen. High in the remote mountains of China, far from cities, far from highways, far from anything modern or familiar, lies one of the least explored regions on Earth, the borderland hidden between Tibet and the Chinese province of Qinghai. A land of icy winds, barren rock, and uninhabited valleys. A land where stone towers over sky. A land where legends linger longer than people. For centuries, travelers avoided these mountains. They whispered of strange lights, strange sounds, strange ruins buried beneath the cliffs. But no one paid attention until a Chinese archaeological team arrived in the early 20th century. What they found should have rewritten history. Instead, it was buried, denied, dismissed, and forgotten. Because in those mountains, inside a series of ancient caves, they discovered hundreds of stone discs shaped like phonograph records, each carved with spiraling grooves running from the rim to the center. And on those grooves were markings, fine, delicate, intentional, unmistakably artificial. These objects would come to be known as the Dropa stones, and they remain one of the strangest archaeological discoveries ever reported. A discovery that many insist cannot be true. A discovery others believe is the oldest message carved by human hands. A discovery so controversial that it was erased from textbooks, but not from memory. This is their story. The expedition, a clue buried in the caves according to early reports. The story begins in 1938, when an archaeological team led by Professor Kai Pu-te explored a series of mountain caves on the Bayan Karaula Range, one of the most inaccessible regions in China. The caves were unusual. The walls were too smooth, as if shaped intentionally. The ceilings were rounded. The tunnels connected in complex patterns. Inside, the team found something even stranger. Stone coffins, skeletal remains, and pictographs painted on the walls. The skeletons were small, around 4 feet tall, with unusually large skulls and thin, fragile bones. The cave paintings showed the sun, the stars, and what looked like oval-shaped objects falling from the sky, landing among the mountains. Beside them were drawings of small, human-like beings. The archaeologists were confused. The locals were frightened. They warned the team never to enter the caves again. But the caves were hiding something no one expected. The discovery of the stones inside one cave, partially buried under dust and sand. The team found a round stone disc, then another, and another, eventually uncovering nearly 800 stone discs scattered across the chambers. Each disc measured about 12 inches in diameter. Each was perfectly round. Each had a hole in the center. and each had a carved spiral groove like the track on a vinyl record. But these grooves were not smooth. They were made of tiny carved symbols, not scratches, not random marks. Symbols arranged deliberately, running in a perfect spiral from one edge to the other. The stones were incredibly old, weathered by time, but their engravings were unmistakable. The team had never seen anything like them. The translation attempt a message from an unknown past for years. The stones were ignored, stored, forgotten. Finally, in the 1960s, a Chinese linguist named Dr. Tsum Nui studied the markings. He noticed repeating patterns, not pictographs, but something closer to a writing system. After months of work, he claimed to have translated the symbols. His conclusion was extraordinary. The discs contained a narrative, a story carved thousands of years ago, a message. The story of the DROPA and the CRASHED ship. According to Dr. Tsum Nui, the stones told a story from 12,000 years ago. A story about a group of beings called the Dropa who descended from the sky. Their craft crashed into the mountains. Unable to repair it, they became stranded on Earth. They encountered local tribes, the Ham and the Dropa, or D-Zopa, who were terrified of the newcomers. Conflict followed. Misunderstandings, fear, tragedy. But eventually, the two groups coexisted peacefully. The inscriptions described the crash, the deaths of many Dropa, the struggles of survival, the eventual integration into the region. If true, this would be the oldest recorded contact narrative in human history. Most scholars rejected the story immediately, but their reasons were not scientific, they were emotional, because accepting it meant accepting something impossible. So the easiest answer was simple: deny the translation, discredit the researcher, erase the discovery. And that is exactly what happened. The bones, anthropological evidence that shouldn't exist. What makes the Dropa stone story more unsettling is the physical remains allegedly found in the caves. The skeletons were extremely small, with thin limbs, oversized skulls, and unusually fragile bone density. These were not normal human proportions. The remains did not match known ethnic groups in the region. Some researchers suggested the skeletons could represent an isolated genetic mutation or a dwarf tribe, but no matching population has ever been identified in China. Others argued the remains belonged to an unknown prehistoric people. If the bones were preserved and available for testing today, DNA analysis could provide answers. But according to reports, many were removed, lost, or hidden after political shifts in China. The bones raise questions that archaeology is still not prepared to answer. The missing artifacts, disappearance, or cover up. The Dropa stones, after appearing in scattered reports, seemingly vanished. Early accounts claimed some discs were sent to Beijing, some to Moscow, others remained in regional museums, but over time, many disappeared. Some museums denied having them, others claimed the stones were misplaced. Several scientists who studied the stones reportedly lost access. Photographs exist, grainy, black and white images showing circular discs with grooved spirals. But physical access is extremely limited. Some researchers believe the stones were removed deliberately. Others think they were quietly shelved to avoid controversy, and others argue they never existed at all. But if they never existed, where did the photos come from? Why were there multiple eyewitness testimonies? Why did several scientists reference them in publications? Something about the Dropa stones does not add up. The Russian analysis, stones THAT defy their age, one of the most intriguing parts of the Dropa story comes from Russia. In the 1960s, several discs reportedly made their way to Moscow for analysis. Scientists found something unusual. The stones contained cobalt and other hard minerals. The material showed unusual wear patterns when placed on a turntable and run with electrical current. The discs vibrated, they produced electromagnetic pulses. They behaved like primitive information storage disks. This may be exaggerated, or it may be true. But if even part of the report is accurate, the discs were more than ceremonial objects. They might have been designed to store information, convey messages, encode stories, preserve a narrative for future generations. A prehistoric data disk carved in stone. Impossible. And yet, the story refuses to die. The tribes of the region, a living clue. Some anthropologists point to a strange fact. There exists a small, isolated ethnic group living in the Bayan Karaula region, the Dropka or Drokpa people. They have unusually short stature, distinct facial features, genetic characteristics, unlike their neighbors. Legends about ancestors from the stars, oral traditions describing sky visitors. Coincidence? Perhaps. But their cultural memory seems strangely aligned with the story carved into the discs. Modern linguistic and genetic research on these people is limited. Many regions where they live remain restricted. Anthropologists have raised questions about their origins for decades, questions rarely answered. The silence of authorities. A pattern repeats when discoveries challenge established timelines. Institutions often respond with silence. The Dropa stones are no exception. There has been no detailed modern testing, no public exhibition, no transparent access for researchers, no official confirmation, no official denial, just silence. Silence is not the same as debunking. Silence can be a sign of uncertainty, or discomfort, or something more intentional. Whether the Dropa stones are an elaborate hoax, misunderstood artifacts, evidence of an unknown culture, a symbolic record, or something extraordinary, remains unknown. But the silence surrounding them only amplifies the mystery. The argument against the Dropa stones and why it fails. Skeptics say the stones cannot be real because 1. The story is too strange, but strangeness is not evidence. 2. The translation sounds unbelievable, but languages thousands of years old often seem unbelievable today. 3. The figures resemble modern sci-fi, but myths of sky visitors exist worldwide long before sci-fi existed. 4. The finders lacked formal archaeological credentials, but many great discoveries were made by amateurs. 5. No official museum displays the stones, but controversial artifacts are often hidden. The truth is simple. No one has proven the stones are fake. No one has proven they are real. The evidence sits in limbo, and limbo is where mysteries thrive. What if the story is true? If the inscriptions truly describe an ancient event, then the implications are enormous. It would mean humans recorded symbolic messages 12,000 years ago. Writing systems existed far earlier than believed. Isolated mountain cultures possessed advanced knowledge. Forgotten groups lived in the Himalayas long before recorded history. Something unexplained happened in ancient China, but perhaps the most shocking possibility is this. The Dropa stones may represent the oldest narrative of contact with non-human beings. a narrative carved into stone not for one generation but for all time, where the Dropa meant to survive only in memory, were the stones their message to the future. Did time erase everything except these silent discs? We do not know, and perhaps we never will. The enduring mystery today, the Dropa stones live only through archived reports, scattered photographs, academic debates, whispers among researchers, and the remnants of a story too strange to accept, but the fact remains. Something was discovered in those mountain caves. Something unusual. Something carved deliberately. Something meant to last. Whether myth or message, fraud or truth, misunderstanding or revelation, the Dropa stones continue to challenge our understanding of the ancient world. They invite one question, a question older than history. What if our past is stranger than we imagine? Because sometimes the most important messages are not written on paper but carved in stone, hidden for thousands of years, waiting for the right moment to be found. History has rules, at least that's what we're taught. One of those rules is simple. Writing began around 5,000 years ago in Mesopotamia. First came Sumer, then Egypt, then the Indus Valley, then China. According to this timeline, everything before these civilizations was pre-literate, meaning humans had no writing systems, no recorded language, no written memory, no symbolic script. But in a small village in Romania, in the heart of southeastern Europe, something was found that breaks this rule completely. Something older than Sumer, something older than Egyptian hieroglyphs, something ancient enough to rewrite human history. 3 small clay tablets, known today as the Tartaria tablets, discovered in 1961 by archaeologist Nicolae Vlasa. At first glance, they look simple, the size of a palm, carved with primitive symbols. But their age, their context, and their meanings all point to one unsettling possibility. These tablets may contain the world's oldest writing system, older by almost 2,000 years. If that is true, then the cradle of writing was not Mesopotamia. It was not Sumer. It was not Egypt. It was Europe, a place no one imagined writing could have begun. And that possibility is something scholars have been unwilling to accept. But the story of these tablets is much deeper and much stranger than anyone expected. The discovery, 3 tiny tablets from a forgotten culture in 1961, Vlasa and his team were excavating a Neolithic site in the village of Tartaria, located in Transylvania, a region already steeped in ancient legends. They uncovered the remains of a female skeleton buried with unusual ritual objects. 26 clay figurines, ceremonial objects, stylized idols, and 3 small clay tablets covered in strange symbols. These tablets had been fired in a kiln, making them durable and intentional, not accidental clay patches or natural impressions. 2 were rectangular. 1 was round. Each tablet was carved with symbols: crosses, trees, branching lines, fish-like shapes, looping patterns, repeated signs, and arrangements that looked structured, not decorative. What shocked researchers was that the symbols looked like proto-writing, not art. They were organized. They were structured. They looked like language. But that was impossible, or so everyone believed, because official history says writing did not exist in Europe in the 5th millennium BC. Yet radiocarbon tests dated the tablets to around 5,300–5,500 BC. If this dating is correct, the Tartaria tablets are older than the first Mesopotamian cuneiform, older than Egyptian hieroglyphs, older than the civilizational record. the tablets belonged to the Vinca culture, a mysterious Neolithic society that flourished across the Balkans long before Rome, Greece, or even the Bronze Age. A culture that built settlements larger than the earliest cities in Mesopotamia. A culture with sophisticated pottery, figurines, and symbolic traditions. But a culture we know almost nothing about. The Vinca symbols, a script without a name. What makes the Tartaria tablets even more mysterious is that they are not alone. Across Serbia, Romania, Bulgaria, and Hungary, archaeologists have found thousands of symbols carved on pottery, statues, clay fragments, and ritual objects from the Vinca culture. Some symbols match those found on the Tartaria tablets. Repeating lines, double X shapes, stylized animals, abstract patterns, cross-like signs, tree-of-life motifs, and directional marks. Scholars named these symbols the Vinca script, though they disagree on whether it truly is a writing system. Some say the symbols represent a full script, an ancient proto-writing system, meaning the people of the Balkans may have developed writing independently long before Sumer. A religious code patterns meant only for ceremonial use, not everyday communication. A symbolic system more complex than art, but not quite writing. A political or clan-based marking system like passports or identifying tags for trade goods. But the structured patterns found on the Tartaria tablets look more like accounting, record-keeping, or narrative text. In other words, they look like writing. And if they are writing, then everything we know about the origins of human civilization must be reconsidered. The burial, a ritual that defies explanation. The tablets were discovered in a grave beside the skeleton of a woman believed to be a spiritual figure, a priestess or cult leader of the Vinca tradition. Her burial was unusual. Her bones were burned after death. The ritual objects around her hint at sacrificial ceremony. The tablets were deliberately placed beside her. Some scholars believe the tablets were sacred records, ritual instructions, protective texts, or messages intended for the afterlife. Whatever they were, their placement indicates meaning, not random disposal. But the most shocking question remains: why were these tablets buried with her? Did she write them? Did she guard them? Did she belong to a culture that understood symbolic language thousands of years before writing officially began? The burial suggests she had authority and knowledge that the community valued. But we will never know her story. Only the tablets remain. The age problem: why the tablets should not exist when the tablets were dated to around 5,300–5,500 BC. Scholars reacted with disbelief, even anger. But the dating process was legitimate. The bones in the grave were dated. The soil layers were studied. The objects found around the tablets belonged to the same era. The Vinca culture is confirmed to have existed at that time. The tablets are from the Neolithic, long before bronze, writing, or structured cities. This creates a huge problem. If writing existed in Europe 2,000 years before Mesopotamia, then writing did not originate in Sumer. Writing was not exclusive to the ancient Near East. Multiple cultures invented writing independently. Europe had complex social structures earlier than believed. Our timeline of human development is incomplete. Many scholars refuse to accept this outcome. Some insisted the tablets must be forgeries. Others suggested they were misdated. Some claimed that even if the objects were ancient, the inscriptions were added later, but no evidence of forgery has ever been proven. No tool marks from modern instruments, no irregular firing, no chemical inconsistencies. Everything indicates the tablets are authentic. So why the resistance? Because the tablets are too old, too complex, too disruptive. They threaten the foundation of what we believe about history. The symbols, an unreadable message from the stone. Age, the symbols on the tablets are arranged in a way that suggests meaning. Linear sequences, repeated signs, structured patterns, symmetrical divisions, boundaries like paragraphs. This looks less like decoration and more like early writing, similar to proto-cuneiform tablets thousands of years later. Some signs resemble astronomical symbols, animal totems, property markers, ritual signs, early numeric systems. Researchers have spent decades trying to decode them. No translation exists. But one fact stands out. Some symbols on the Tartaria tablets closely resemble symbols found in ancient Mesopotamian proto-writing, in Sumerian pictographs, in Anatolian early scripts in Danube Valley artifacts. This raises an explosive question. Did writing spread from Europe to the Near East instead of the other way around? If true, this changes everything we know about ancient literacy. The controversy: why archaeology ignores the tablets. The Tartaria tablets created chaos when first announced. Many scholars refuse to accept the findings. Some called them hoaxes. Some claimed they were too advanced. Some argued the symbols were meaningless. But none of these explanations held up. Why the resistance? Because accepting the tablets as the world's oldest writing means Europe played a major role in early civilization. Prehistoric cultures were more advanced than believed. Writing developed in multiple places, not just Mesopotamia. Our timeline of human cognitive evolution is flawed. The Neolithic world was not primitive. These are uncomfortable conclusions. Easier to ignore the tablets than rewrite history. And so the Tartaria tablets became one of archaeology's most inconvenient discoveries. The Vinca culture, a forgotten civilization. The more archaeologists study the Vinca culture, the more extraordinary it becomes. This Neolithic civilization had some of the earliest large settlements in Europe, produced pottery more sophisticated than early Near Eastern cultures, created figurines with complex symbolism, used silver. Thousands of years before the Bronze Age, had organized social structures, may have had a form of proto-writing. But the most shocking discovery is this: the Vinca settlements were larger than the earliest Mesopotamian cities. Some had populations of 5,000 people, unheard of for Neolithic Europe. Why are these settlements not famous? Why are they not in textbooks? Why do we not learn about them? Because their achievements do not fit our traditional model of civilization. A model centered on Sumer, Egypt, and the Near East. The Tartaria tablets threaten that model, and so they remain unnamed, uncelebrated, unexplained. The message that survived 7,000 years, whatever the Tartaria tablets were writing, ritual markings, or symbolic records, they carry a message across time. Humans were expressing complex ideas long before official history begins. The tablets tell us the past is older than we believe. Writing began earlier than textbooks. State knowledge systems existed outside the Near East. Prehistoric Europe was not culturally primitive. The tablets are tiny, barely larger than a hand. Yet they contain the weight of forgotten knowledge. They remind us that the story of human civilization is not complete, that there were chapters written, literally written, long before historians began recording history. And the most humbling truth is this: we still cannot read them. The enduring mystery today, the Tartaria tablets, sit in a museum in Romania. Few visitors see them. Few scholars study them. Few outsiders even know they exist. But they stand as one of the greatest archaeological riddles ever discovered: three small clay tablets, symbols carved before writing officially began. A message from a Neolithic culture advanced beyond its time. Are they the first writing system, ritual symbols, proto-accounting records, sacred inscriptions, or the last surviving message of a forgotten civilization? We may never know, but the tablets remain, untranslated, unexplained, unmistakably real, a whisper from a world erased by time. A story we cannot read, a reminder that human history is far deeper than we imagine. There are places on Earth where time does not move forward, where the air is thick with memory, where silence hangs like a curtain, untouched by the modern world. Deep in the forests of southwestern France, in the rolling hills of the Weser Valley, lies one such place, a world sealed by nature for nearly 20,000 years, a world discovered by accident, a world filled with visions so breathtaking, so detailed, so impossibly advanced that they shattered everything archaeologists believed about prehistoric humans. This place is called Lascaux, the Sistine Chapel of the Ice Age, a cave whose walls are alive with color and movement, a gallery of over 900 painted animals, 600 engravings, and thousands of symbolic marks, a masterpiece created by Stone Age artists using techniques that should not have existed at the time. Lascaux is not just a cave. It is a message from a forgotten age, a message written in ochre and charcoal, a message we still struggle to understand. The discovery, a hole in the ground and a window into the past. On September 12, 1940, four teenage boys were exploring the woods near Montignac when their dog chased a rabbit into a small hole. The boys crawled in to rescue it and found not a rabbit's den, but a deep shaft leading underground. With matches and lanterns, they ventured inside. At first, they saw nothing. Just rocks, shadows, the musty smell of ancient air. Then their lanterns illuminated the walls. What they saw made them freeze in silence. Huge bulls, horses galloping, stags with branching antlers, painted in bright reds, blacks, yellows, and browns. Animals layered on top of one another, lifelike and dynamic. These were not childish drawings, not sketches, not crude attempts at art. These were masterpieces, shaded, proportioned, stylized, intentional. Art historians would later say that Lascaux represents a level of artistic skill equal to Renaissance painting, yet created around 17,000 to 20,000 years ago. The boys realized immediately that they had found something extraordinary. The world would soon agree. The animals, why are they so perfect? The walls of Lascaux are covered in images, more than any other Paleolithic site in Europe. Horses painted with depth, shading, and accurate muscle structure. Bulls and aurochs massive, imposing animals up to 18 feet long, the largest cave paintings in the world. Stags and deer rendered with graceful lines and careful attention to antler detail. Bison shown charging, breathing, turning their heads. Predators, felines, bears, and other carnivores appear in darker, more mysterious corners. Abstract symbols, dots, spirals, grids, arrows, branching lines, shapes no one fully understands. And among all these creatures, only one human figure appears, and he is drawn differently, almost awkwardly, compared to the animal's perfection. Why? What was the purpose of these paintings? Why so many animals? Why so few humans? And why do the paintings show such mastery? These questions still haunt archaeologists today. The technique, a level of artistry that shouldn't exist. Most people imagine cave paintings as simple line drawings. Lascaux is nothing like that. The artists used sophisticated pigments: ochre, charcoal, manganese dioxide, hematite, mixed with binders like animal fat or plant resin. Multiple painting tools: brushes made of animal hair, pads of moss or fur, hollow bones, used as spray tubes, fingers for fine details, advanced shading techniques. They blended colors to create shadows, depth, and texture. The same techniques used by Renaissance artists thousands of years later. Use of the cave's natural shape: they positioned animals where the cave walls bulged outward, giving the art a 3D effect. This is not primitive art. This is genius, and it appeared tens of thousands of years before we believed humans had such mental capacity. How did Stone Age people create work so advanced? No one knows. The sound of the cave, an acoustic mystery, one of the strangest discoveries about Lascaux, has nothing to do with art. It has to do with sound. Researchers noticed that many of the chambers with the most detailed paintings have unusual acoustics. Some echo like concert halls. Some amplify voices dramatically. Some focus sound into specific directions. Some floors vibrate at particular frequencies when stepped on. This suggests the artists chose their painting locations intentionally, not just for visibility but for sound. Why? Perhaps rituals took place here. Perhaps chants or music were part of the experience. Perhaps the cave was a ceremonial space where sound and image worked together. Lascaux was not just a place to paint, it was a place to perform. The symbols, an ancient language we cannot read, scattered across the cave, are abstract signs. Dots, lines, branching shapes, rectangles, sequences that repeat marks that appear in other caves across Europe. Some researchers believe these symbols represent early calendars, hunting instructions, clan symbols, territorial markers, mythological stories, or a form of proto-writing. If true, it means humans began symbolic communication tens of thousands of years before writing emerged. The symbols could be the earliest form of recorded language, and we cannot read them. The human with the bird head, the strangest image of all, deep inside a side chamber, is the only human figure in Lascaux. A man, or something like a man, with a bird-like head and outstretched arms. He appears to be falling or lying on the ground. A spear or staff lies beside him. Behind him, a giant bison is wounded. Below him sits a mysterious bird on a stick. This scene is unlike anything else in the cave. Why is the man drawn so differently from the animals? Why does he have a bird's head? What does the bison represent? Is this myth, magic, a shamanic ritual, a story of death and rebirth? No one knows. It is one of the oldest narrative scenes in human history and one of the least understood. The age: how old is too old? Radiocarbon dating places the Lascaux paintings around 17,000–20,000 years old during the Upper Paleolithic period. But some researchers argue the art could be older. The level of mastery suggests a long tradition, a tradition we have not yet found, which means earlier masterpieces may still be hidden, lost, or destroyed. Lascaux may be just the surviving fragment of a much older artistic lineage, a lineage erased by time. The theory of star maps astronomy in the cave, some researchers believe the Lascaux paintings depict constellations. For example, the dots above one of the bulls match the stars of Pleiades. Other patterns resemble Taurus, Orion, and Cygnus. The human bison bird seen may represent a celestial event. If true, then the artists understood the night sky with astonishing accuracy. They were not just painters, they were astronomers, and their art was a sacred map. The closing of the cave, human breath destroys ancient art. When Lascaux was opened to the public in 1948, people flooded in to see the ancient murals. But within years, a disaster occurred. Carbon dioxide from visitors damaged the paintings. Algae began growing. Bacteria spread across the walls. Human breath was destroying art that had survived for 20,000 years. Authorities closed the cave permanently in 1963, but the damage had begun. Today, access is extremely restricted. A few archaeologists are allowed inside each year. Even they must wear protective suits. A perfect replica, Lascaux II, was built to allow visitors to experience the art, but the real cave remains nearly inaccessible, protected, sacred, fragile, a reminder that some wonders cannot be touched. How did they see in the dark? One of the strangest questions about Lascaux is simple. How did Stone Age artists paint in a cave with no natural light? Researchers discovered stone lamps fueled by animal fat, torches made from pine resin, hollow bones used to blow pigment onto high walls, scaffolding structures reconstructed from excavation. Traces this reveals planning, engineering, and purposeful design. These were not random doodles. These were organized art projects. Projects requiring long-term collaboration, specialized skill, knowledge of pigments, architectural planning, and understanding of perspective. In other words, civilization-level behavior long before civilization began. Why were they painted? Theories without answers. No one knows why Lascaux exists, but there are theories. 1. Hunting magic. Early humans may have believed painting animals gave them power over them. 2. Spiritual rituals. Shamans entering trance-like states, recording visions. 3. Initiation ceremonies. Young hunters being trained or welcomed into adulthood. 4. Proto-storytelling, a form of mythology, the earliest version of recorded human stories. 5. Astronomy, mapping stars, seasons, and migrations. 6. Something we cannot imagine, a purpose lost across the gulf of time. The truth may be a mixture, or none of these. The mystery of the masters. The greatest mystery of Lascaux is not what the paintings show. It is how they were created. To paint like this, a person must have imagination, memory, fine motor skills, spatial awareness, symbolic understanding, mastery of color, knowledge of animal anatomy, engineering ability, teamwork, coordination. This is not the work of primitive cavemen. These were artists, thinkers, spiritual leaders, scientists of color, form, light, and symbol. They understood the world in ways we do not. Lascaux forces us to ask, if humans created art this advanced 20,000 years ago, what else were they capable of? We assume the past was simple. Lascaux proves it was not. It proves our ancestors were far more advanced mentally, spiritually, artistically than we ever imagined. The enduring wonder today, Lascaux remains one of the greatest archaeological treasures in the world. It reminds us, How old humanity truly is how creative we have always been, how much we have forgotten, how many mysteries lie buried beneath the earth. Lascaux is more than a cave. It is a message across millennia, a whisper from an age before history, a masterpiece painted by hands long turned to dust. And perhaps the most haunting thing about Lascaux is this: we do not know why they painted these images, but they painted them for someone, maybe for themselves, maybe for their gods, maybe for their descendants, maybe for us. Across the desolate highlands of western China, where the land looks more like the surface of Mars than Earth, lies a mountain that locals rarely approach. A wind-carved, stone-gray peak rising above the Qinghai Plateau, surrounded by dried lakes, eroded soil, and silence as deep as time itself. This lonely mountain is called Mount Baigong, and inside its flanks, buried in chambers, protruding from cliffs and scattered across the surrounding plains, lie hundreds of iron-like pipes, pipes perfectly round, pipes embedded in solid stone, pipes that lead into chambers carved with impossible precision, pipes that appear to feed into ancient lakes that dried up long before recorded history. Some pipes run deep into the mountain, others rise vertically from the ground like stumps of a forgotten machine. Others lie half buried in sand, rusted but unmistakably artificial. Their age, possibly 140,000 years. Their creators, unknown. Their purpose, unexplained. Their existence, impossible according to everything we know about human history. This is the mystery of the Baigong Pipes, one of the most baffling archaeological enigmas on Earth. The Mountain of Three Caves, the discovery that made no sense. The story begins with explorers who stumbled upon a strange structure on Mount Baigong, a triangular opening resembling a massive, ancient doorway. Inside the opening were three deep caves, each leading into the mountain. Two were collapsed, filled with rubble, but the central cave remained accessible. And inside that cave, researchers found something completely unexpected. Sticking out of the cave floor, walls, and ceiling were metallic pipes, some small as a finger, others wide enough to crawl through. The pipes appeared, cut cleanly, perfectly cylindrical, arranged, intentionally embedded deep into rock layers. Some pipes disappeared into the earth. Some extended horizontally. Some ran vertically through the roof of the cave. This alone was strange enough. But outside the cave, the mystery deepened. Across the ground below Mount Baigong, hundreds of pipes pierced the soil, some rising a few inches, others several feet. Many were clustered near the edge of a dried lake called Lake Tassin. It looked like the scattered remains of an ancient water system, or something far more advanced. Yet the mountain was supposed to be untouched wilderness, with no human settlement in ancient times. So how could a complex network of pipes exist here? The Chinese Academy of Sciences investigates the discovery caused enough curiosity that a research team from the Chinese Academy of Sciences traveled to the site. They conducted field studies, surveys, visual mapping, pipe sampling, geological analysis. What they found shocked them. Chemical tests revealed unexpected results. The pipes were made of iron, high percentage, silicon, calcium, and several rare metals, but the most stunning finding was this: some pipes contained materials impossible for natural formation. The presence of iron oxide was expected, but tests also showed trace elements that do not occur naturally in volcanic rock or sediment. More importantly, the team found that 31% of the material in some pipes was unknown, a composition that does not match any natural mineral formation. Even stranger, many pipes were 99% uniform in diameter, something extremely hard to achieve without industrial methods. So where did they come from? The official report offered no explanation. It ended with a simple statement: further study is required. But that study never came publicly. The age of the pipes science challenges history. Geologists took samples of the pipe material and surrounding sediments for dating. One test used thermoluminescence, a method measuring how long minerals have been exposed to heat or sunlight. The results gave an approximate age of 140,000 years. This date is controversial, but even the most conservative estimates place the pipes at least 5,000 to 10,000 years old. Either date is a problem. Homo sapiens were still developing basic tools during those eras: stone scrapers, flint blades, bone needles. There was no metallurgy, no smelting, no casting, no drilling, no large-scale construction systems in remote mountains. So how could people have built a complex pipe network thousands or hundreds of thousands of years before the invention of metalworking? No known ancient culture fits the timeline. This forces two interpretations. 1. The pipes are natural but resemble manufactured objects, but their uniformity makes this unlikely. 2. They were made by an unknown culture, one not recorded in history. If the second is true, then human history is incomplete, very incomplete. The geology argument, why it fails. Some skeptics claim the pipes are natural fossilized tree roots that absorbed iron over time. The problem? A long list. 1. Tree roots do not grow in perfect straight lines. Many pipes are mathematically straight. 2. Some pipes form T-shaped joints. Roots do not join like plumbing. 3. Some pipes run horizontally for meters. Roots curve, twist, and split. 4. Some pipes run vertically through solid rock layers. Roots cannot penetrate thick, ancient stone. 5. The chemical composition does not match fossilization. Too much iron, too many exotic trace metals, too uniform in structure. 6. Pipes appear cut at the ends. Roots tear or rot. They do not cut cleanly. Even geologists who reject the archaeological explanation admit the natural root hypothesis is weak. So the mystery remains. The possible function: what were the pipes for? If the pipes were man-made, what purpose could they serve? Several theories have been proposed. 1. A water transport system. Many pipes lead from Mount Bagong toward the dried Lake Tassin. Perhaps the system was used to move water, drain water, monitor water levels, or channel the lake into the mountain. But why? And by whom? No known ancient culture lived near the lake, and no traces of settlement were found. 2. A ventilation system. Some pipes run vertically into chambers. This resembles ventilation shafts inside pyramids or underground structures. Could the mountain once have contained a bunker, a storage chamber, a ritual space, a mining operation? No interior rooms have been confirmed, though the central cave remains partially blocked. 3. A smelting or industrial operation. This theory suggests ancient people used the pipes for heating, chemical reactions, gas venting, or material processing, but metallurgy was not supposed to exist in this region at the time. For something we cannot identify: a lost technology, a forgotten industry, a system with no modern equivalent. In many ancient mysteries, the greatest error is assuming the past worked like the present. Perhaps the pipes had a purpose we cannot even imagine. The chambers who built them and why. Inside the central cave of Mount Baigong, researchers found that the walls are unnaturally smooth, the ceiling forms a perfect dome, the chamber is symmetrical, the entrance is triangular, and precise. These features resemble architecture, not natural erosion. If ancient people carved these chambers, then they had tools to cut rock, they understood symmetry, they had engineering skills, they built structures inside mountains. This pushes the timeline of advanced human activity far earlier than conventional archaeology allows. The lake connection. The pipes that lead into water. One of the strangest discoveries is that several pipes run directly into the lakebed of the once large Lake Tasin. These pipes extend vertically, branch underneath the ground, feed into the dried lake, follow a non-natural grid pattern. This suggests the ancient builders monitored or interacted with the lake. But why? Ice Age climate, water filtration, resource extraction, some forgotten technology. No one knows, but the pattern is intentional. The 2002 government response: interest, then silence. In 2002, Chinese officials briefly acknowledged the mystery. A research team was formed. News outlets reported it. Curiosity surged. Then something strange happened. After a few initial studies, all public updates stopped. No new reports, no additional funding, no official explanation. No closure. The story went quiet. Even local authorities placed signs near the site calling the pipes a mystery but offered nothing more. Why? Were the findings inconclusive, too controversial, too disruptive to standard historical narratives? Silence leaves room for speculation. Theory of ancient advanced civilization. Some researchers propose that the pipes belong to a civilization older than recorded history, possibly one wiped out by climate change, floods, or geological upheaval. Evidence supporting this idea includes the pipes' impossible age, the lack of settlement, ruins, the remote location, the engineering complexity, the intentional layout. This civilization could have been prehistoric Homo sapiens, a forgotten branch of early humans, a society erased by the last ice age melt, a group with lost metallurgical skills. Mainstream academia rejects the idea, but the pipes remain. Theory of extraterrestrial origins among locals. The mountain has long been associated with sky visitors. Legends describe a heavenly palace inside the mountain, celestial beings landing near the lake, metal tubes used by the sky people. Of course, legends are not evidence, but they are part of the story. Some theorists suggest Mount Baigong was a landing facility, a monitoring station, an energy extraction device, or the remains of a crashed craft. The triangular cave entrance does resemble a structural design rather than natural erosion. Still, without physical proof, the idea remains speculative. The most likely truth: we don't know. The Baigong pipes refuse to fit into any known category. Natural formation. The evidence contradicts it. Known ancient civilization. The timeline is impossible. Modern hoax. The pipes are embedded too deeply and are too widespread. Industrial debris. There are no mines, factories, or settlements in the region now or in ancient times. Every explanation fails at least one major test, which leaves one conclusion: the origin of the Baigong pipes is unknown. Scientists do not agree. Archaeologists avoid the topic. Geologists disagree with each other. Local legends offer clues but no answers, and the mountain remains silent. The enduring mystery of Baigong today, Mount Baigong stands unchanged. Wind sweeping across its barren slopes, pipes rusting quietly in the dry air, the cave still watching from above, the lakebed cracked like ancient bone. Visitors rarely come. Researchers rarely return, and the mystery remains unsolved. The Baigong pipes challenge everything we think we know about. Ancient technology, human capability, lost civilizations, and the deep, hidden history of our planet. Perhaps one day we will understand who built them, or why, or how. But for now, they remain as they have for thousands, perhaps hundreds of thousands of years, silent, stubborn, impossible, real. A network of metal veins inside a forgotten mountain, pulsing with questions we still cannot answer. In the heart of Mesopotamia, the birthplace of civilization, writing, agriculture, and the earliest cities, lies a discovery that should not exist. A discovery so simple yet so advanced that its presence disrupts everything we believe about ancient technology. A clay jar, a copper cylinder, an iron rod, a mysterious seal of asphalt. Together, these components form an object that looks like something from the modern world, not the ancient one. Today, we call this object the Baghdad Battery. It was discovered quietly, studied quietly, dismissed quietly, and then locked away quietly when conflict swept across Iraq. But for decades, the question has remained: did people in ancient Mesopotamia know how to generate electricity? If the answer is yes, then our understanding of human history is missing an entire chapter of technological development. Because the Baghdad Battery may be 2,000 years old, roughly the time of the Parthian Empire, long before the world invented batteries. And yet there it was, a small clay jar with all the components of a functioning electrochemical cell. A battery, from the ancient world, a device that should not exist, and a mystery that refuses to go away. The discovery, a simple jar with a complicated secret, in 1936, during excavations near modern-day Baghdad, archaeologist Wilhelm Koenig found a strange artifact among the ruins. It looked ordinary at first, a clay pot about 5 inches tall. But when Koenig examined the inside, he noticed something unusual. Inside the jar was a rolled copper sheet forming a cylinder, an iron rod suspended within the cylinder, an asphalt plug sealing the top, a hollow space between the copper and iron. The design was deliberate. The components were arranged with precision. Nothing about the object was accidental. Koenig realized immediately what this looked like: a battery, a device capable of producing electric current when filled with an acidic liquid. He published a report suggesting exactly that. The world was stunned. Skeptics dismissed him, but the artifact itself was undeniable. Soon, more jars were discovered, multiple examples from the same region, all constructed in a similar way. This was not a one-off object, not an accident, not a broken tool. It was a design, replicated, intentional, meaningful. But what was it for? The construction, too intentional to be random. The Baghdad Battery consists of 4 essential components, each demonstrating purpose. 1. The clay jar, a standard Mesopotamian vessel, but carefully crafted to hold the other parts snugly. 2. The copper cylinder, a rolled sheet of copper formed perfectly into a tube and soldered with a lead tin alloy, a technique requiring metalworking skill. 3. the iron rod inserted into the copper tube but prevented from touching it directly. 4. The asphalt seal waterproof, airtight, and expertly applied to keep the interior isolated from contamination. Modern batteries use a container and anode, a cathode and electrolyte. All four appear in the Baghdad battery. Even more astonishing when scientists replicated the design using lemon juice, vinegar, grape juice, fermented wine. The device produced 0.5 to 1 volt of electricity. Not a large amount, but enough to shock someone. Enough to electroplate gold or silver. Enough to power early experiments. This raises the essential question: why would an ancient civilization build a battery? And what were they using it for? Theories, attempts to explain the impossible. Archaeologists have proposed several theories about the battery's purpose. None fully explain the mystery, but each opens an intriguing possibility. Theory 1: electroplating metals. One of the most popular theories is that the batteries were used for electroplating, depositing thin layers of gold or silver onto objects. Evidence supporting this idea includes Mesopotamian jewelry with thin, even metal coatings, artifacts that appear electroplated under microscopic analysis, the battery's ability to generate low-voltage current, perfect for plating. If this is true, it means ancient craftsmen were performing electrochemical metalwork thousands of years before science invented the technique in the 19th century. But there is a problem. No electroplating workshops have been found in the region. No tools associated with plating have been discovered. No written records describe such a process. Yet the artifacts remain smooth, perfect, even coated. Some researchers argue this is circumstantial. Others believe it is evidence of lost technology. Theory 2: medicinal or therapeutic use. Some historians propose the batteries were used for pain relief, stimulation of nerves. Ancient healing rituals. Cultures around the world have used electric fish for therapeutic purposes. The Baghdad battery produces comparable voltage. Perhaps healers used a mild electric shock as treatment. This is plausible, but again, there are no texts describing such a method, and Mesopotamian medical tablets are usually detailed and precise. So why the silence? Theory 3: religious or magical use. Electricity would have seemed supernatural to ancient eyes. A spark, a tingle, a sensation from an unseen force. Priests may have used the batteries to impress worshippers, to demonstrate divine power, to animate idols, to create reactions in rituals, to produce small sparks or tingles. This could explain why the jars were found near temples. Ancient priests often used hidden mechanisms to enhance ceremonies. Electricity would have been the ultimate illusion. Still, this theory lacks direct evidence. Theory 4: storage of sacred texts or knowledge. Some have proposed the batteries were part of a larger mechanism now lost. Maybe they were not used individually but connected in series. To power a forgotten device, to generate consistent current, to activate ritual objects, or to preserve knowledge. We no longer understand. No such device has been found, but the possibility remains. Civilizations rise and fall. Technology is lost. Knowledge disappears. If these batteries powered something, that something may have vanished long ago. Theory 5: they are not batteries at all, but something else. Some skeptics insist the jars were simply storage vessels, ritual containers, scroll holders, perfume jars, but this theory fails to explain The copper tubes, the iron rods, the intentional separation of metals, the asphalt seal, designed to hold liquid, the lack of organic residue, the absence of similar jars used for storage, the Baghdad battery, is too elaborate to be a random container. It was built for a purpose we have not yet identified. Why the battery exists. The Baghdad battery creates multiple historical contradictions. One, metallurgy was not advanced enough. The soldering technique between copper and metal suggests a high level of skill. Two, no ancient civilization mentioned electricity. No cuneiform texts, no instructions, no scientific notes. Silence. Three, multiple examples were found. Hoaxes rarely occur in multiples, across distances, in identical designs. Four, the components form a perfect electrochemical cell. The design is too exact to be accidental. Five, the technology appears suddenly. There is no gradual development. The Baghdad battery emerges fully formed, with no prototypes, no earlier versions. This defies technological evolution. The Parthian Empire, a civilization with missing chapters. The battery dates to around 200 BC, 200 AD, during the Parthian era. But the Parthians left behind no engineering manuals, no scientific texts, no technological treatises. Their records are sparse, their achievements partially lost. It is possible they inherited the battery design from a much older culture, perhaps Sumerian or Babylonian. If so, the battery may be the survivor of a forgotten scientific tradition, a relic from a time when knowledge was passed through guilds or priesthoods, not carved into clay tablets. The disappearance, the missing artifacts during the Iraq conflicts. The Baghdad battery, along with many irreplaceable artifacts, went missing from the National Museum of Iraq. Some claim it was stolen. Some claim it was relocated. Others claim it was destroyed. No one knows. Today, replicas exist, photos exist, scientific records exist. But the original artifact, the one that sparked the entire mystery, may be gone forever. This makes the Baghdad battery even more enigmatic. A puzzle missing its key piece, a secret slipping further into darkness. Ancient intelligence, the possibility we ignore. The Baghdad battery forces us to confront a difficult idea. Ancient humans may have been more advanced than we assume. They observed, they experimented, they tested, they used trial and error. They discovered natural principles long before formal science existed. Electricity is not complicated to discover. Metal in acidic fruit produces a shock. Sparks come from static. Electric fish create pulses. Many ancient cultures encountered electrical phenomena. Perhaps the people of Mesopotamia were the first to harness it. If so, what else did they know? And what did they use it for? The enduring mystery today, the Baghdad battery stands as one of archaeology's most unsettling discoveries. It does not fit any established timeline. It does not belong in the ancient world. It does not correspond to known technologies. It cannot be fully explained, and yet it existed. A simple clay pot that threatens the story of human progress. Was it a scientific tool, a ritual device, an industrial machine, a medical instrument, a symbolic container, a misinterpreted relic, or something else entirely? Whatever it was, the Baghdad battery reminds us of a profound truth. Our ancestors understood more than we realize. And the past is filled with inventions we have yet to rediscover. The mystery continues, silent, electrifying, and unresolved. There are mysteries carved in stone, There are mysteries buried in caves. There are mysteries forged in metal or painted on walls. But sometimes the greatest mysteries are written on fragile sheets of parchment, a book so strange, so beautiful, so utterly untranslatable that it has confounded humanity for more than a century. A book that should not exist. A book filled with drawings of plants no botanist has ever seen. A book written in a language no linguist can decode. A book whose purpose, author, origin, and meaning are all unknown. This book is called the Voynich manuscript, and it is perhaps the most puzzling artifact in all of archaeology, a manuscript that refuses to reveal itself, no matter how many geniuses try to unlock it. It is not just unreadable, it is unclassifiable. It is unlike any other manuscript in human history. Some believe it is a medical text written in code. Some believe it is an encyclopedia from a lost culture. Some believe it is an early scientific work centuries ahead of its time. And some believe it was never meant for human understanding at all. But to understand the manuscript, we must start with the moment it entered the modern world, a moment as strange as the book itself. The discovery, a book found in a secret room in 1912. An antiquarian named Wilfrid Voynich purchased a collection of old manuscripts from the Jesuit College of Villa Mondragon in Italy. Among the stacks of aging leather volumes, he noticed a smaller book wrapped in a worn cover. Inside, he found pages of delicate vellum flowing handwriting in an unknown script, elaborate illustrations, diagrams, astronomical charts, drawings of strange creatures, and most unsettling of all, plants that do not exist in nature. Voynich realized instantly that he had discovered something extraordinary. He believed the manuscript contained a hidden message, possibly scientific knowledge encoded by medieval scholars. But as he began to study it, he learned something far more troubling. No one could read it. Not then, not now, not ever, at least not yet. The script, a language not found anywhere on earth. The Voynich manuscript is written in a flowing, elegant script. It looks like real writing, complete with letter shapes, consistent spacing, grammatical patterns, repeated structures, rules of order, but this language appears nowhere else in human history. It is not Latin, not Greek, not Hebrew, not Arabic, not Cyrillic, not any known alphabet, not any known code. It is completely unique. Linguists have named it Voynichese, but the name explains nothing. Computer analysis reveals that the writing is statistically meaningful, structured like a real language, too complex to be gibberish, too deliberate to be accidental, too consistent to be random. But what language it represents, or whether it represents a real language at all, remains unknown. Some experts believe it is a cipher, a code meant to hide dangerous or secret knowledge. Others believe it is the script of an unknown culture. Some think it is an artificial language created centuries before invented languages became known. And a few believe it is something else entirely, a message from a world outside our own. Whatever the truth, one fact remains: no one has ever decoded a single sentence. The illustrations, beautiful and impossible. The manuscript contains more than 200 pages of illustrations, divided into strange categories. 1. The botanical section, drawings of plants that do not exist, leaves that bend in impossible ways, roots that spiral like seashells, flowers with alien geometry. Some pages show plants made of multiple species combined into one organism, as if the artist was describing something that exists only in imagination or somewhere far from Earth. 2. The astronomical and cosmological diagrams, charts of stars, moons, and circular patterns. Some diagrams resemble astronomical maps, but none match known constellations or planetary arrangements. One fold-out page shows a huge, intricate wheel of interconnected symbols, a diagram that scholars still fail to interpret. 3. The biological section. This may be the strangest part of the manuscript. Naked human figures, almost always women, appear inside tube-like structures, baths, and interconnected systems resembling biological organs. Some look like diagrams of the lymphatic system. Others resemble reproductive structures. Some scholars think the artist was describing processes inside the human body, long before medical science existed. For the pharmaceutical section, drawings of jars, containers, and plant parts organized like a herbal medicine guide. But the plants don't exist. The jars don't match any known style. The organization suggests function, but the meaning is lost. 5. The recipes section, lines of short paragraphs marked with star-like symbols. They resemble alchemical recipes, instructions, lists of ingredients, but since no one can read the text, the recipes remain a mystery. The age, older than expected radiocarbon dating, places the manuscript around 1404 1438 AD. This means the book is real, it is not a modern fake. The vellum is medieval, the ink is consistent with medieval chemistry. But this dating raises more questions. If the book is medieval, why is it written in a language that does not appear in any other document from the period? Why would someone in the Middle Ages invent an entire alphabet, language, and system of diagrams? And perhaps most puzzling, why would anyone go to such lengths to hide the meaning of a book, unless the book contained something worth hiding? The encryption theories, failed attempts, and dead ends. Countless experts have attempted to decipher the manuscript. Cryptographers, linguists, mathematicians, historians, military codebreakers, AI algorithms, pattern analysis, software amateurs, academics, all have failed. Even the world's greatest codebreakers, including those who cracked Nazi ciphers in World War II, could not decode it. Why? Because Voynich does not behave like any known cipher. It is too structured for a simple code. It is too consistent for a fabricated language. It is too fluid for meaningless text. It is too complex for a hoax, and it is too stable for improvisation. The manuscript follows linguistic rules. Words have prefixes and suffixes, patterns repeat with mathematical precision, grammar-like structures appear, entropy levels match real languages. This is not random writing. It is a real system, but a system no one has ever seen before. The hoax theory, why it fails. Some argue the manuscript is a medieval prank, a hoax designed to fool scholars. But this theory collapses quickly. 1. The manuscript is too consistent. A hoax would have inconsistencies. The Voynich manuscript has none. 2. The manuscript is too long. 200+ pages of perfect nonsense is mathematically improbable. 3. The drawings show deep knowledge. Botany, astronomy, biology. Even if fictional, the diagrams show intention and structure. 4. The ink and vellum match. No reuse of materials, no corruption in layering. Everything was created at the same time. 5. No motive. Medieval hoaxes were simple and symbolic, not 200-page masterpieces that take years of work. The hoax theory satisfies skeptics emotionally, but not scientifically. Who wrote the book? This question has haunted scholars for decades. Possible authors include 1. Roger Bacon, a medieval English scientist rumored to possess secret knowledge, but his handwriting does not match. 2. John Dee, a 16th-century magician, mathematician, and alchemist. No evidence connects him to the manuscript. 3. An unknown European scholar possible, but the language has no similarity to European scripts. 4. A lost culture controversial but not impossible. Languages disappear. Knowledge disappears. Entire writing systems vanish from history. 5. Someone not from this world theories involving extraterrestrial origin, interdimensional messages, or altered states of consciousness exist but lack evidence. The truth remains hidden. The purpose, why was the manuscript written? No theory fully explains it, but several ideas exist. 1. A scientific encyclopedia, a record of knowledge using fictional or symbolic plants and diagrams. 2. A coded medical manual for midwives or healers. 3. An alchemical guide containing processes disguised to hide dangerous knowledge. 4. A spiritual or mystical text. The diagrams of women in flowing tubes may represent visions, rituals, or metaphors. 5. A work of art created to preserve a symbolic worldview. 6. A message to the future written in a code only someone far ahead in time could decipher. Which of these is correct? Perhaps none, perhaps all. The mystery remains. The enduring enigma today, the Voynich manuscript, is kept at Yale University's Beinecke Library. It is scanned, photographed, studied, and admired, yet still unread. A silent book filled with a language spoken by no one. A world drawn by someone whose mind we can no longer understand. A time capsule from a forgotten perspective. Perhaps it encodes real knowledge. Perhaps it describes an imaginary cosmos. Perhaps it was never meant to be understood by ordinary eyes. Whatever the truth, the manuscript stands as the final reminder in this series. The past is deeper, stranger, and more mysterious than we can ever imagine. The unsolved story of humanity across these 15 parts, we explored. Ancient machines, forbidden caves, impossible engineering, extinct languages, mysterious figures, lost civilizations, artifacts that defy logic, stories carved in stone and written in symbols. We cannot read these discoveries share one powerful truth. Human history is not complete, not linear, not simple, not fully told. There are things our ancestors knew that we have forgotten. There are technologies we rediscover instead of invent. There are civilizations erased by time, leaving only whispers behind. There are messages written for eyes that no longer exist. And at the edge of every mystery is the same question: what else is out there? What else have we not yet found? What else lies buried beneath sand, sea, stone, or silence, waiting? The ancient world still speaks. We just haven't learned how to listen. Until then, the mysteries remain, unsolved, unexplained, unbroken. Live.